Like to be knowing about people. Gotta reach 'em, see it right.
Trump's new message to Iran, with the commander-in-chief ordering a powerful and deadly attack against Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen over the weekend. Multiple rebels dead after the strikes hit the intended targets in Yemen's capital city on Saturday. With President Trump writing on Truth Social, the Houthis have waged an unrelenting campaign of piracy, violence, and terrorism against American ships, aircraft, and drones. Your attacks must stop starting today. And if they don't, hell will rain down upon you like nothing you have ever seen before, writes the president. Trump also sending a direct message to Iran, warning the Iranians not to support terrorist proxies. The president following up after breaking news on this program last week that he sent a letter to the supreme leader of Iran asking to open up talks regarding Iran's nuclear ambitions.
Want to get it off your chest? You're in the right place. They accuse this show of being run by boobs. Well, let me tell you about us boobs. We're real and we're spectacular. Want politics and fun sprinkled with a lot of laughs? Heard in every state in the Union and 1,000 cities around the world. We just finished 16 years of broadcast excellence, now in our 17th year. The Dave Weinbaum Show is streaming live all over the world. Remember when you were growing up and your parents taught you to admire certain icons in our society? I do. I was taught to respect teachers and school administrators, police, presidents, and some but not all politicians, doctors and lawyers. The conflict came when my father, Melvin, taught me to hate bullies. It put me on alert for unfair teachers, anti-Semites, racial discrimination, including me, a Jew, bullying in sports, and finally, wacko judges and juries infested with a certain know-it-all attitude, and the people who follow them seem to have teamed up with our Democratic politicians to go to war with the president. We recently elected him, Donald Trump, a clear majority, unseen in current times. The example Donald Trump taught us dramatically demonstrated seconds after a high-powered missile whizzed into his ear, quarter-tenth of inches away from blowing his head off, was never to give up, never let up, and you'll never let your country down. Almost all other politicians attacked by swamp judges and other people in the swamp like the CIA, the FBI, gave up and gave in and perpetrated our downward slide as a country. Trump and his MAGA following are the solutions to the judges who think they can knock us off and run our country instead of what the law and Constitution says about the separation of powers. Trump is the cure, not the disease. 2028, anyone?
With the supreme leader saying Iran would not be bullied, writing, the insistence of some bullying governments on negotiations is not aimed at resolving issues, but rather at asserting dominance and imposing their demands. The Islamic Republic of Iran will certainly not accept their demands, writes the Ayatollah Khomeini. Joining me now with more on the Yemeni attack, Iran, and the president's agenda is the nation's Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Mr. Secretary, great to see you this morning. Thank you for being here. Can you tell us how it all went down on Saturday?
Well, it all went down because an era of peace through strength is back. Just like in his first term, President Trump had to deal with the weakness of President Obama and get rid of ISIS, and he did it more quickly than anybody else. We're sitting on 4 years of deferred maintenance from Joe Biden, where in particular, when you talk about the Houthis, they were allowed for over 100 times to shoot at U.S. Ships, to shoot at commercial shipping.
What a week! Starting off with last Friday night. I mean, we were in hell, all of us around here, trying to wonder whether or not our houses would be knocked over, whether we would survive it. And that was something. You know, we've had warnings before, but I've never seen anything like this, and I don't think anybody around here has seen a storm like this maybe for the last 100, 200 years.
It's interesting. We were sitting here doing our show last Friday, and of course, they already had severe weather alerts. You're going to have severe weather Friday night. Okay.
Yeah, big deal. Yeah,
I've lived here all my life. I've lived through this. I've had tornado sirens go off more times than I can count. I've seen a tornado in person as a kid. Become a little bit desensitized, to be honest. And this storm was the 1 out of 50 that was actually bad, and it got us pretty good, unfortunately. But
yeah, and I know a lot of people are suffering out there, and I pray for you, and we got to do something for the people that got the power going. I mean, my God, what a quick recovery that was.
For the devastation, less than a week later, and they've restored all power.
I mean, we were told, don't drive tomorrow. That's Friday. That's St. Pat's Day. That's St. Pat's weekend. Okay, that's the biggest day biggest weekend in the history of me being here. We really know how to celebrate St. Pat's Day and the Friday before it. So I'm thinking to myself that when I wake up, the first thing I do is I send a message to Jeff Zink. And out there in, I guess he was in, he wasn't in D.C., he was in Arizona. And I said, hey, look, I need a favor. We just got hit real hard, and we need you to contact FEMA and get somebody down here to help us out. I don't know what the damage is, but I'm pretty sure it's extensive. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, your St. Pat's is over, and then I got a call from Audrey, my director of operations, and she says, "Guess what?" I says, "What?" I'm dreading what she's going to say. All the stores are open. Now, I don't know how that happened because there were plenty of places that were down, and the odds of any of my stores being open was very low, much less all of them.
So one of the areas that was hit by the tornado was not far from where I live at. Right across the street, Quick Trip. They didn't get hit by the tornado, but their power got knocked out, so they can't do any business. But Love's across the street on a generator, from what I was told for a little while, full operation. That included that McDonald's there, and wow.
And then Saturday morning, that's the first place I stopped at, and busier than hell. Everybody's working their butts off, and well, I don't want to be crude because I said something bad about QTs as in it's about time you figured out how to knock off the competition, but that was wrong. I shouldn't have said that, but they liked it anyways. And Nikki, the manager there, had it all, and they were busting it. And then they says, "Well, you going to work here today?" My daughter-in-law, Brenna, was there, so I says, "No, I got to go to Rolla and see what's going on over there." So I went to Rolla, and oh goodness, it was like 8:30 in the morning. The drive-thru was out to the street. I went straight to the drive-thru. I hardly ever got a chance to go in the store to direct traffic, and my God, it stayed that way until like 8:30 till a little after 11. And I'm thinking there, I was thinking I must have been there. I'm thinking till 1 o'clock. I thought it was 1 o'clock already. Usually I'm pretty good about that stuff. But I was running all over the place trying to find people, either a safe spot in the drive-thru, or finding people who didn't want to go in the drive-thru necessarily. but didn't realize that some spaces might be open, like paraplegic spaces and other spaces. All right, I got to get going because I got a great guy coming up here. But we got JJ coming up in seconds. A guy named Larry Marty, who's running for school board. Chris Adamo and Bill and Don, who are this is Mayhew and Bill Hardwick, and they are going to compete to see if they are worthy. If I happen to go out of town, or my wife and I take a vacation, if they are worthy to run the show themselves, it's going to be a big test. They're going to be on at 10, and they're going to. I gave them the whole hour. All right. So now, with that being said, and also want to welcome J.P. Maxwell here, the producer, and my wife is a little ill this morning. She'll be in, I think. And so, that being said, let me introduce you to this gentleman here. He's got a lot to say today. I know he does. I mean, he is a actual genius when it comes to the Constitution and common sense, quite frankly. And he is 256 years old, not quite as old as the 360-year-old person that's still collecting Social Security. I want what he's eating, okay? Anyway, this guy's a smart guy. And, we put him on, my son is putting us on TikTok, and we're on, we're on podcasts, and we're on YouTube. And they have little shorts on it, and this guy he's getting thousands and thousands and thousands. Him and the guy I got on next, Chris Adam, but he has got like the record right now. He's up there almost 30,000 on one little snippet, maybe a 20, 30-second bit from a show. I think you paid somebody off personally, but that's me. Anyways, please welcome all the way from Rolla, Missouri, my friend, John Jeffrey Bradshaw. JJ, how are you?
Good morning, Dave. I am pretty good. Storm damage, we had one oak tree knocked down and it...
Uh-oh. Where you at? You've frozen.
This week in national news has just been amazing. So much stuff going down, and I'm going to gripe about some of it and get it off my chest. If you recall 60 days ago when Donald Trump was sworn in as president, all the Dems started howling, well, this is going to be a constitutional crisis. Oh my God, it's going to be a constitutional crisis. Well, the Dems are bringing it on themselves. And first, I'm going to talk about federal district courts. I happen to know something about the Constitution, and when it was signed and as the founding of our country, it established an executive branch, a judicial branch, and a legislative branch, 3 equal parts of government. And within the judicial branch, it made a case for having local courts and higher courts and appellate courts and ultimately a Supreme Court. That part of it's in the Constitution. No place in the Constitution does it mention federal district courts. Now, why is this sticking in my craw? Because a bunch of federal district courts, in particular the one in Washington, D.C., a judge named James Boasberg, who, by the way, was formerly a federal district judge. This guy is way over the tips of his skis, Dave. This is the guy that decided that it was okay to bring back planes that had a whole bunch of bad guys on them that we were sending elsewhere. And he issued a directive, an injunction to turn those planes around and bring those 261 Tren de Aragua gang members back.
Sure.
No notice was given to the federal government. You know, when you have a hearing in front of a judge, both parties are expected to be there and argue their case. In this case, nobody from DOJ was even represented. This guy had a fellow whisper in his ear, hey, let's turn those planes around, and he wrote an injunction to do just that. That is clearly unconstitutional. Clearly. This guy is so far. Did
he mention any law that said this was a legal right of his? Did he mention that?
Here's the issue on this thing, Dave. Trump has invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to use to ship these guys off elsewhere. Now, this is an old law that has been used sporadically over the course of our history. And it's still on the books and it is legal. And what this guy said is for 2 weeks, we're not going to do this, and you turn that plane around. Well, that plane was already in international airspace before they ever heard about it.
That was going to happen.
Like I said, constitutional crisis, but it has occurred as a result of one crazy ass judge branch policy, which is political. Judges are supposed to be apolitical and follow the Constitution of the United States. This guy is way over the tips of his skis, Dave. And of course, it is immediately appealed, which DOJ certainly has the right to do that. But these courts are not even mentioned in the Constitution. Back in court today. Yeah, they're going to be in court every day for the next forever.
This judge has a history, by the way. You know that.
He does indeed.
Do you know who the judge was in the Jeff Zink and his son Ryan Zink's?
Yeah.
That was him.
Is this the same guy?
Same guy. He's also the guy that helped Hillary Clinton come up with
that part I knew about
with her BS. And also, he's involved with the law firm that was out there saying that Trump was, he's a Russian hoax. And this guy is bad news. He's the worst part of the swamp you can find.
I agree. And of course, there's judge shopping that goes on all the time, particularly in New York State and D.C. These liberals go and find a judge like this one who is. Now, what's going to happen to this guy? Well, the wheels of justice grind along pretty slowly. And number one, Congress has, there's been an impeachment article written against this guy. Whether that'll ever make it through the Congress, I doubt it. Even if they get a vote in the House of Representatives, the Senate would never vote to impeach, don't have 60 votes. But the way these things are done normally is the other judges get together and say, this guy's over the tips of his skis and we need to censure him in some fashion. And in the worst case, he can be removed from his office. These are appointed people. They were not voted on by a majority of our citizens. Nothing like that. They're appointed by a president.
That's a big deal. Why is that a big deal?
Why is it a big deal? Because presidents always take partisan folks and plug into those spots like Obama did, like Biden did. I almost said O'Biden. It shows that he's a sock puppet.
I knew exactly who you were talking about. I think everyone else.
Yeah. The point is that our judicial, at least at the lower levels and up through the district levels, maybe not so much on appellate courts, have been populated by left-wing extremist bozos, by folks like Clinton, Obama, Biden. And I'm afraid there needs to be a little house cleaning. This needs to stop. Now, in the United States, or anything, if they can find it entered into the courts, This is a case where the left is very much trying to slow down Trump's advance to put this country back right again. And their thought is, I think, that if we can shove enough legal problems in front of these, Trump will slow way down because he's stuck. I don't think it's going to work. I think the Cash Patels and the Pam Bondis of this world are going to steamroll right on through that stuff.
I'm not sure I agree that it won't work, because there's a lot of things they can do that's going to drag this thing out. You know, got so many.
It is going to drag it out, Dave, and that is their intention.
So I'm right now saying Trump 28. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
I'd like to see Vance 28. But
maybe.
Anyway, it's interesting to me to see how these folks are doing their stuff. This is right out of Rules for Radicals. You slog folks down in the mud. But I think you're going to see activity on the executive branch level that's going to go right past this stuff. Once this gets to an appellate judge that has any kind of common sense, he's going to kick this thing right out, as has been happening with some of the other frivolous lawsuits that have been filed. So it interests me a lot. There's another one that's the transgenders in the military. We have a Biden appointee, Anna Reyes, who is saying you can't kick those transgenders out. You got to bring them back in. That's going to be kicked out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're cutting in and out. I tell you that. It's not your fault.
All these things are intended to slog Trump down in the mud, and I think he's above that. Another Trumpism here: the Department of Education, executive order signed to disband the Department of Education. This stinker has been around since 1980. And we have spent billions of dollars at the federal level on education, largely on bureaucracy and edicts. And our test scores are still down in the dumps. So if you look at what happens when federal money or comes to a state for distribution to local schools, there are always strings attached to this. And of late, those strings have been outrageous. DEI, white supremacy, white privilege, nothing even remotely connected to education. These are strings that are attached to ensure compliance with whatever the federal edict might be under whatever president. Trump's getting rid of that. At least he is attempting to get rid of that. And I think he's going to be successful at it.
Well, why? What's wrong with having a Department of Education?
How about, Dave, we have a Department of Education that distributes funds without any strings attached to the states as block grants. The states then are much more accountable to the citizens than the federal government is. Gives this money to the counties, the cities, et cetera, where folk are more accountable to the local population. States and the local government should run education. We live in Rolla, Missouri, relatively conservative place. We do believe in the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. We want to graduate students that can actually balance a checkbook or tell you what the War of 1812 was about. The feds are much more, and have shown under the Biden administration particularly, that they are much more about indoctrination than they are education, and our test scores prove that.
Yeah, so, that's what I was getting at is the results. The results are we're in last place in the entire world, spending the most money in the entire world, and we're not getting the results. So when
actually, there are some South African countries that are behind us, but they're not many.
Either you go bankrupt or you change.
Well, in business, that's exactly what you do. And I think Trump's doing the right thing.
Exactly. That's why we need a businessman in the White House. That's how an effective businessman would react.
I don't mind federal money being spent on education. I think it's a very good idea. Why don't we take that same block of money, which is a whole big pile of money, and give that to the localities with the edict that thou shalt educate your children?
Yeah.
Pretty simple. We could write this piece of legislation on one page. We're going to give you money by based on population, citizen population, by the way. And you guys spend that educating children. And oh, by the way, we're going to be monitoring the test scores. So you can't spend this thing on a vacation in
Not
Bimini.
only the test scores, but the politics involved, the transgender issue, the issue of kids going to these dances,
drag shows,
and the parents aren't allowed. Yeah. And the parents aren't allowed. This is stuff that shouldn't be happening in schools, should it?
No, it shouldn't. And if schools are left to the localities, so that the local school boards, we have school board elections coming up right here in April. The citizens of the city or the county involved are much more capable of voting in people to boards of education that have their local values. I mean, that's the way this country was founded. So it's going to go bye-bye. Good riddance. I think it has been an experiment since 1979 and 1980. It'd be an absolute disaster. Politics has taken it over. It's at the whim of whoever's in the White House. And finally, we have somebody in the White House that says, no more of this BS. Let's put this thing right. Congratulations and kudos to you, Donald Trump.
That was Jimmy Carter's idea, was to put it in D.C., so to speak.
It was the Carter administration, but look at the Congress that he had at that time. He had a Democrat majority. He could cram through most anything he wanted.
Right.
And the idea of a federal Department of Education wasn't so bad, not back then, but it has certainly been corrupted and turned into more of a propaganda machine and more of a social organization than it ever was, educating children.
And it grows
I want my great-grandchildren to graduate from high school with at least some idea of the history of our country, some idea of mathematics, some idea of science.
As real grades. Some of these people, they give them great grades, but they're incompetent because they've been out of school for like the pandemic. They're not home studying. They might be home, but they're not studying.
Yeah.
And this thing keeps dragging on. You go from middle school to high school, and it keeps going down. And then you go to college.
Yeah.
And most of these kids don't know what the hell they don't know how to write stuff. They don't know how to do arithmetic. They don't know history, except for the history that are taught in a very bad way, such as the Democrats would tell you. So, what else you got, my friend?
It's a sad state of affairs. Any reasonable person is going to look at the state of affairs in our education system and say, this is a disaster. This needs to be changed. And I think Trump is going to change it. Let's talk briefly about Gaza. I was hoping the rabbi was going to be on and give us some insights to that. But, we had this Gaza ceasefire was based on phases. And phase one was done badly, but it was done.
Right.
And Trump and Netanyahu both said phase two needs to happen, return the hostages, and we will hold back on our attacks on you folks. And Hamas, who has never honored a ceasefire, who has never negotiated in good faith, pretty much thumbed their nose at Netanyahu and Trump. And the next day, 80 airstrikes happened in Gaza. We blew the hell out of them, and it's going to continue. And Netanyahu has said, and the leader of his military has said, return the hostages, alive or dead. And we'll talk about stopping this thing. But
Yeah,
until you folks,
they eliminated, they call it, 5 Hamas leaders in those strikes. This has been the whole problem all the time. It's a like a dance or something where they say let's have a ceasefire, and then a year later they're attacking Israel. Israel attacks back, and then they have a ceasefire, and it's been going on for 20 years. Okay,
this dance
and
has
so
been going
finally
on.
Israel put their foot down. About time. I think God had a lot to do with this.
It is about time.
Sometimes you got to put your foot down to get a leg up. You can't.
During the Obama administration and the Biden administration, both of those encouraged Israel to use a great amount of restraint. And frankly, Israel did. Benjamin Netanyahu is now in charge and says, no mas, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to quit until the last Hamas person is gone from the face of this earth. Fine. These are people that are brutal, non-human. About time to take them out. Well, the argument then comes back, well, gee, they're going to kill the hostages. Look, guys, they've already killed most of the hostages.
That's right.
And what the hell did they take hostages for to begin with?
Tortured while they were there.
Fight a war.
Killed and tortured.
Yeah. So, Hamas, your arguments really don't hold any water anymore, and I'll be thoroughly pleased to see all of you dead. I think the world is a better place without you, and I think Netanyahu and Trump are going to do some fine things with that little chunk of argued about land. Got a final thought for you, Dave. Where it looks like we're coming up against a hard break. Yemen has been a nasty place for many, many years. And the Houthi rebels, and they're calling them rebels, but these are nothing more than pirates, have been shooting at and attempting to kidnap commercial ships going through the Red Sea. And, Trump finally said, again, no more. He went in and did some surgical strikes in Yemen. I think Israel's likely to do the same thing. And then Trump did something that none of our politicians have ever done. He turned around to Iran and said, you guys have been financing this. You've been encouraging this. And you better stop, or seriously bad things are going to happen to you. Whether that's economic, whether it's military, I don't know. I will thoroughly be excited to watch this go down, because finally, someone in our government is standing up to Iran and saying, you're not going to do this anymore. Very bad things are going to happen to you. Yep. On the same note, Trump gave him 60 days to come up with a nuclear deal. Or very bad things are going to happen. This thrills me, Dave. I am a Christian. I believe, to quote Ronald Reagan, exists in Iran and needs to stop. Frankly, I think the Persian people would be thrilled if they got rid of the Ayatollahs and the insane religion that they have been pushing on those folks.
The people love Israel. The people love America in Iran.
Donald's got his back up, and I think he has the vast support of the American people. We're going to put a stop to this stuff. Now, is this going to cost us some militarily? I wouldn't be surprised at all if it did in the end. But that's certainly better than fighting in Iraq or Afghanistan. At least this way, we're headed towards the folks that are actually causing these problems. Dave, that's all I got for you.
Let me read some stuff that's on the boards, because some of it involves you, I think. And we'll let's see what we got here. Okay.
I hope people are saying good things.
Oh, John Jeffrey Bradshaw, ready. All right. What else we got? I know we got more. There he is. Hey, have a seat over there, and we'll be with you in a short period of time. All right. Let's see. We got a next guest in here, and he's live. Patricia Odin Maxwell, sounding good, looking good. Go team. Okay. Sharon Passy, good morning to you all. You always have such a good show. And looking forward to another one today. So am I, by the way. And Andrea Shrum, good morning from Northeast Missouri. Good morning, Andrea. Roy Maddox, good morning from Oklahoma. I think that was for you, but I
think so.
Some of that too. Shannon Reed, good morning to you all. Thank you, Shannon. Good morning to you. MD Talab Ali, good evening, dear, from Bangladesh. All over the world, baby.
Well,
Patricia Oden, Maxwell, thanks again, JJ.
Thank you,
we got
Pastor
that.
Pat.
Okay, my friend. And with that, I'll say thank you so much, John Jeffrey Bradshaw.
It has been my pleasure.
Okay. We don't want to pay overtime. All right. Thanks a lot, JJ. And we're gonna do some commercials, if you don't mind. And we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Thanks.
Your home is your castle. You don't need unwanted hassle. Don't let those creatures move in to stay. Let us protect your investments. That's what we're all about. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day. Plank is locally owned and family operated right here in Rolla, a Google preferred business. Our customer service and your satisfaction is our #1 goal. So call Plank today at 368-3333. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
Honey, what are you doing?
What does it look like I'm doing?
It looks like you're filling up a swimming pool.
Yep, I'm filling up a swimming pool.
In our living room?
How else am I going to watch the game and stay cool?
If your AC is on the fritz, call Hartley's Climate Control. Hartley's is the area's best in HVAC repairs, installs, and maintenance. Knowledgeable, honest, and dependable. Serving Rolla and the surrounding areas for commercial or residential needs. Hartley's Climate Control. Community born, community raised, community serving.
Call Hartley's Climate Control today at 573-368-3163.
Never be too coy to tell your friends and family about koi sushi and hibachi. Celebrate the best Chinese-Japanese restaurant in the Midwest. Call 573-426-5551 to make a reservation or order takeout. Locally owned, 1808 North Bishop, Rolla, Missouri.
We can sum up McDonald's new crispy chicken sandwich in one word. Crispy, but also juicy and tender. Okay, it's crispy, juicy, tender, all one word. But then, also pickle. Oh, and potato bun, which is 2 words. Okay, we can't sum up our new crispy chicken sandwich in one word, so you'll just have to try it to understand it. Order ahead on the McDonald's app at participating McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Merrill's Quarry and Asphalt, 40 years serving cities, counties, and everyday businesses with driveways for people who live and work in our little piece of heaven right smack dab in the middle of America. Call 573-578-9101 for your free estimate of rocking, rolling, paving, driveways, sealing, and striping too. That's 573-578-9101 for your free estimate.
Your home is your castle. You don't need unwanted hassle. Don't let those creatures move in to stay. Let us protect your investments. That's what we're all about. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day. Plank is locally owned and family operated right here in Rolla, a Google preferred business. Our customer service and your satisfaction is our #1 goal. So call Plank today at 368-3333. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
At your locally owned Price Chopper, our standards are high because we know yours are. See for yourself what an incredible fresh selection of grocery items we have in store. Talk to our expert meat associates about what you're looking for. They're happy to meet any special requests like custom cuts, or see our expert produce associates on how to pick out the best fruits and vegetables. Quality in the deli means fresh, full flavor, and always delicious. If you're craving fresh baked goodness, we have that too. You can expect the best selection and the best value while interacting with our friendly and knowledgeable employees. You can find what you're looking for fast and easily at the best prices at Price Chopper. Fresh savings every day.
Gotta reach 'em, see it right down.
Acar Real Estate, where experience matters. 532 million sold since 2003, the #1 sales volume in Phelps County. As a client for decades, I can say they are the best in mid-Missouri. Call 573-368-7355. That's 573-368-7355 for the best real estate experience you'll ever have.
Gotta reach 'em, see it right now.
Insurance going up like crazy? Daniel and Henry Insurance is one of the largest private insurance companies in the world. Richard Boyette, 314-444-5011. He's my guy at Daniel and Henry for 10 years. Business or personal, call Richard at 314-444-5011. He's the best.
At Town & Country Bank, we've got all the perks of a national bank, like online banking, quick loan approval, and you can deposit your check from your phone. But that's not why our customers love us. They love us because we still offer hometown customer service. Stop by one of our 2 Rolla locations and let our friendly team remind you how special hometown banking can be. We're locally owned and will take the time to understand your needs. Smart, friendly solutions. Town & Country Bank. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Hi, my next guest is here. He's in the house. Larry Marty, a graduate of Rolla High School and Mizzou, started his career in St. Louis in the pharma business, leaving it in 2015 and went to construction, doing business in Denver, Wyoming, and Montana, moving back to his roots in early 2024, and he is running for school board. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's
yes,
right.
sir. So please welcome Larry Marty. Larry, I saw where you felt it important to run for school board in Rolla. Why?
Well, so I grew up in the community. My dad moved his family here in 1977, set up a private practice, and 1983 I graduated from high school, went to college. From there, went to St. Louis, got married, and I've always been back to Rolla. It's always been my home. Never moved my membership from the same church I've had since I was here. I probably spent 5 to 6 weeks out of every year here bringing my kids. This is where, believe it or not, to my wife's chagrin, this is where we took vacations instead of going to Mexico or, Hawaii. I took my family to Rolla, Missouri, and we played on farms the whole time. So my kids love it. It's their home. And so once I got to the point in my career where I was ready to leave the industry I was in, which was when I left was construction. I still have that industry, but when I was ready to come back home, a few years ago, my dad passed away. Didn't spend enough time with him, but I would see him all the time, but just didn't live here. And all my family's still here. So thought it was a good time to get home, spend some time with my mom. She's doing great, but she's 86, just turned 86. Happy birthday, Mom.
Happy birthday.
And so thought it was good to get home, and I wanted to be part of the community. Now that I was here, and I knew I couldn't do city council, I'm out just outside city limits. So school board was a great way to get involved in community. And I'm a absolute believer that our kids are the future, as we, not only logically, but also just the fact that they are what's going to bring us into that next millennium. And I just wanted to make sure that I could contribute to something I think is vitally important, which is our schools, our public schools.
Yeah, this is a great place to live. I mean, I'm from Chicago and grew up there basically, and then went to school in Denver, which I also liked.
Yeah.
But here, we talked earlier about the Jewish problem I thought I might have here. But most of the people they're very good. I mean, I had more incidents of anti-Semitism in Chicago than here by far.
Yeah.
You know. Anyways, you're a businessman,
Yes,
and for most of your life now, what got you into that?
So after college, I did some, I sold cars for a little while and did some stuff. My goal was always to go to medical school like my dad. And I quickly realized I wasn't quite as smart as him. Somehow or another, that gene, whatever the smart gene was, left when it was him. Maybe went to my siblings. I didn't get it. So I was like college, after college and everything, I was like, I just don't think I'm built for another 10 years of training in medical school. So, but I did get into pharmaceuticals after that and thought that was a good way to kind of use some of my knowledge. Great career, love pharmaceuticals. I spent 20 years, worked up through corporate, got promotions. And that took me from the Missouri area. We was in St. Louis, but that took me to Connecticut, which is where our corporate headquarters were. Spent 3 years there, 3 years out in Oregon. Loved Oregon. Beautiful place. People were, a little nutty out there, but, all in all, great place to live. And then that took me to Colorado. I mean, one of the most beautiful places to live. I live in a town called Evergreen. We just sold our house. In fact, today's the closing on the house I just sold out there. So, but it's a beautiful community up in the mountains and love that. So the pharma industry was great, but 20 years in pharmaceuticals, I was watching the landscape change. I'm a salesman by nature. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy building rapport and using my reputation to help sell things. And pharmaceuticals was that. And that's the way I taught my sales reps that worked with me. But as the HIPAA laws came in, we got less and less access to physicians. And it was harder to try to, share knowledge. And it became a challenge. And I thought, well, you know what? It's not as much fun as it used to be. I could see where it was going to be much more indirect sales versus actually face-to-face. So I had a good friend of mine. We used to race bicycles together out in Colorado. Bicycling out there is very big. And so we were racing, got on the same team, and he owned a little masonry company up in Boulder, did little jobs, and the company wasn't very big. And he said, "Hey, why don't you come work with me? Let's build this company." And I thought, well, I'll get out of pharmaceuticals. Problem was, I was leaving a fairly well compensated position, great benefits, pension, 401, healthcare, company car, company credit card to go to work for a friend.
I bet you had health insurance too.
I had amazing health insurance. And then I went into a field where I had I didn't take pay for the first year because we were building the business, and I had to pay my own health insurance through Cobra at about $24,000 for the year. Wow. It's got to, but I could see the light and see where it was going to go. And it gave me an opportunity to control my own destiny. And I like to, my business partner ran the financial end. I ran the operations because that gave me the direct people connection, which I really liked. I ran all our projects and all our teams. And so we grew that company. It's a great company. And then I still own the company, although my business partner is a big fisherman who has a lodge in Alaska, fishing lodge, and he really wanted to retire and go to Alaska. And I was like, well, if we're going to get to that point, I'm only 60. I don't get to retire yet, but at least I can move back to Missouri, be close to my family, be close to my mom. And I still own one business. It's a distributorship for a German landscape and hardscape product that we do. So, and that's what I still run. My son's my business partner in that with me. He's smarter than I am. So I guess the smart genetics went from my dad to my son. I think it jumped me.
You're pretty sharp, guy. You're full of it. Come on now. So your son, like my son, Aaron, pretty much he's running most of the business.
Yeah, good.
Still the majority owner in one, and he's the majority owner in all the stores, including one of his own stores in Salem. So he's doing well, and now his wife is getting involved, and she's going to be an owner-operator, which is great.
Family business.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and I got lots of grandkids and stuff, and they're neat. Yeah, my grandkids are smart.
Yeah.
So, anyways, your company is international, in that do you go to Germany a lot? Or?
We haven't yet. Our German business partner, who is the main importer for the product, his name's Wolfgang and he's the one that introduced these particular products to North America. Probably about 15 years ago, started introducing them. And so the products we have is a German manufacturer called, the acronym's GFTK, and that's all anybody knows because the actual German pronunciation I couldn't do. But it is their number one manufacturer of these products. And so we import them into North America. And my son and I, it is pretty much a two-man show to cover pretty much all of North America. We haven't pushed into Canada yet, but we're getting led that direction. They want us to get up into the Toronto area, which is fabulous.
Get there before, because it's going to be a state.
It can be the 51st.
That's right.
I love it, unless Greenland beats them to it.
So I detect that you're a little bit conservative.
Yes,
just a tad. I don't know for sure.
It's just exactly. Yeah. It's hard to tell. The cowboy hat gives it away.
So when you go to the school board, what issues do you want to take up?
So I think, and I always, when I came here and started doing this and started meeting with some of the people that I, simply expressed an interest to, and then that kind of blew up into introducing me to different people to get me involved. I always want to say I don't know the school board here in the sense that I've not been part of it. This, quite frankly, has not been my community for 40 years. But last year it has, but it's not been. And I don't like to say, well, gosh, the school board has done or hasn't done this. What I would say is, in my time to get to know the people on the school board, I know some very well. Some are close friends. And I will say that the school board in general, I think is a very good school board. I think they've done a very good job. And so my interest in getting in is not to say I want to change their direction. It's to say that I want to bring myself in and give some of my background and my experiences and my knowledge, which are not in education, not in administration, but in real world business applications, is how can I use that to help the school board in directions. I think our schools are going to grow. I think with the changes in the yesterday's Department of Education decision, I think that's going to bring a lot of resources that aren't directed federally, but we get to have directed from a state perspective. I think that's going to lead to some sort of open enrollment, the school choice, where we could have children that maybe are in communities a little bit more rural that want to be part of the raw school systems.
Okay.
And interestingly, I talked to a lady when I was meeting some people the other day, and she said, gosh, if you remember, and it was back when I was graduating, Rolla was kind of a pinnacle state school for a public school system, especially when considered it to be rural, of sending out students that were highly educated, highly trained through a great program at RTI, and were respected for the fact that, you got your education in Rolla. And I don't believe that that's changed, but I believe that it's going to give us an opportunity as we bring more people in to push us a little higher. It's easy to jump into, well, your testing scores are here, and your testing scores maybe didn't improve here. And I've looked at that. Once again, this is still new to me. It's not been something that's not been in my background, is understanding how testing scores are calculated. There's enrollments, there's graduation rates, there's attendance rates, there's school test scores. But the reality is, why shouldn't Rolla test in the top? Why shouldn't their scores be in the top? And so if they're not, then my job as getting on the school board would be, how can I help through my experience make that happen? Is it helping us establish better facilities? The new high school looks great.
Sure.
Right across the street, my church right across the street. So I saw it every time I'd come home, I'd see them building it. But that's the high school. Junior high, I went and visited. I have a good friend there that is a counselor, and he took me on a tour of it. And so that's changed, and they've added to it. But some of our elementary schools haven't changed since I moved here in 1977.
Right.
And so do we need to grow that? And Dave, I'm sure we have a community that's going to be developed here. I believe McBride Sons is building, or McBride Homes is building 500 and something homes out on 72.
Wow.
And that has the chance to bring in another influx of children and grow our schools even more. And so I think we're going to need facilities that grow. Now, I understand as a businessman, that all comes down to money. It's real easy to say, let's have a new facility. But when you look at it and says, well, it's going to cost $40 million to tear down a part of a school and build an extension to it, how do you fund that? And so those are the things that's me getting in. I believe that our school board, and I've talked to people on it, I think we have a very good nonpartisan school board. I don't think that they bring politics into the school, and that's great. I came from a community where that wasn't the case. Where I left in Colorado, 100%. My kids went to those schools, top-notch blue ribbon schools up in the mountains, beautiful community. And it's the reason I sent our kids.
Evergreen, right? You're up in the mountains.
Up in the mountains. It's beautiful.
Sure.
8,000 feet. We have an amazing school. And my kids went there, and I could have sent our kids to private schools. And we looked at it when we first moved there, but it would have been driving down the hill into Denver every day with the kids. And I'm like, well, we got great schools. They're top-rated schools. Why wouldn't I send my kids?
I guess the ride down on a bicycle would be neat, but coming back would be a killer.
I did it all the time, and coming back up was always a hard part. But anyway, the schools there, and then over the last 8-10 years, we've seen them start to change to the point now where they do stuff in the schools, they allow stuff in the schools that absolutely I'm against. Now, they don't do that in Rolla, and that's my goal, is to be on the school board and just continue to make it about the kids and not make it about a societal, feeling that somebody
What about
has.
the national order from Trump yesterday, I believe it was when he signed it, that closes down the school deal in D.C. and sends it back to the states?
I listen, as a conservative, and I make no bones about the fact that I'm conservative, and I think that everybody that knows me, that's been following me, knows I'm conservative. My signs that just went up around town for school board, I made sure they're red, white, and blue. I want people to know that I believe that patriotism is a huge part. I believe American exceptionalism should be absolutely one of the key things that we teach our kids, is how amazing our country is. So getting rid of a absolutely unnecessary, overburdened behemoth with, I can't remember how many thousands of people worked at this place. I thought it was great. I thought it was great. Now it's, we need to make sure then that money that comes to our state is spent appropriately. And that's obviously, school board jobs helps with our money that's local, but how our state spends it, I think we have a great leadership in our state right now. And I think they will do a great job of disseminating that money and how it gets spent. I don't know, and I don't know that anybody knows, at least nobody as dumb as me, how that money is going to come in, what it's going to look like, how much is going to go to states. I imagine a state like California, New York, Texas, where they have, or Florida, where they have 30 million people, they're going to get more of the lion's share than a state, like Missouri. But I still think it's a great opportunity. I think, it's not hard to look at, the record. So the record for the Department of Education is they have, since 1970, whatever, when they were founded, that their costs per student, and it's all done out to be, with inflation, that, the cost per student has gone up 3 or 4 times, and yet our test scores have either dropped or not improved.
Yeah.
And if I had a business that did that I spent more and more money and got either less or no return, you as a businessman, Dave, I wouldn't have the business anymore. I couldn't. I'd be out of business.
There you go.
And so, but yet the only company in the world that can lose money and still be in business is our government. It's because it's not their money. It's my money. It's your money.
Sure.
It's everybody's money.
Right.
So that's why I'm like, take the money away from giving it to the federal government, and let's put it back in our state where it belongs.
So do you have any issues that you've studied here that the school board is currently working on and or has worked on in the past?
The only I don't know that it's an issue. I think it's an area that we need to focus on. And I talked to one of our administrators in one of our schools and I asked them, I said, what is the key for you? What's your most important thing that you deal with on a day in, day out basis? And without hesitation, the answer came back, the mental health of our students. We have a mental health crisis in our students.
Why?
I said, of all the things, these are kids. How can we have a mental health? Now, as kids get older and they're, at that 17, 18, that almost an adult. So I can see kids like that having more worldly views about, what's going on that they get stressed out over. But these are children. How can mental health?
Well, some people are saying it's the phones.
Oh,
stop the phones until they're a certain age.
Listen. I'm one of those, and yeah, I mean, your kids are the same. My kids, my son's 31, my daughter's 28. The only phone they had, the only thing it could do was text, and now kids have the whole world.
Oh
at their
my
hand.
God,
it's astonishing. And now I will say,
my son, damn it, he still uses his phone. Of course, he's 51. But what the hell? I can't believe it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think
I keep telling him, take that thing off and look around, see what's going on.
Oh, I tell you, I mean, and me personally, we had rules that, when we always ate dinner together. Every meal that I ever had with my family, if I was home and wasn't away on business, we set the kitchen table and we had dinner together. My wife's a little 4'10" Italian woman who was like, we're gonna sit and have dinner every night. So. And there were no phones ever allowed. Even today, at 31 years old with my son, if he comes up to our house to eat dinner in Colorado, there's no phone. You put it on the counter wherever. It does not go there. But I think today, there's a lot of parents. They're busy. You got both parents at work, so kids come home and it's what they have, and they don't know that there's a whole world out there that, like you said, if you just opened your eyes.
I'm guilty.
We all are.
Yeah.
And I use mine for business. I just checking emails before I walked in, and I'm like, why do we do that? But I will say the junior high school, I know, has a policy from the time the kids get to school until the time they leave. They cannot use their phones.
Yeah.
And amen to that, because that's the way it should be.
And that was brought up. I think it was by Trump.
Yeah.
And that was brought up, no more of these phones in school up to maybe 14 or 15-year-olds or maybe later.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
I think that's a good idea.
And it's not a hard policy to implement. I think the second you do it, you're going to have an uproar of the kids in school. But once again, kids shouldn't be able to challenge authority like that. This is the rule. This is what you follow.
I heard there's been discussion with kids about this, and the kids are for it. They're for getting rid of the phones.
I hope they are. I hope our kids are learning.
In school. Now, after school, I'm sure they want them. But.
I think it'd be great. And so I don't know the policies. I think at the high school, they can't use it except for in between classes. But the phone should be, leave it and then get it when you leave for go home. No in between.
Well, this has been great. I'm a very interesting. You really speak well.
Well, I appreciate that, Dave.
I mean, I saw my numbers shooting up as you came in.
That's probably my family.
I had to look at it.
I got
a big family.
I got a huge family. I let them know I was going to be on the radio. I said, "Come listen to your younger brother. Older brother. For my brother John, who's assistant fire chief. He's the only one younger than me. I got.
So when you leave, is it going to drop?
Dave, I told him to stay on until Dave signs off.
Okay, that's good. That's good because that'll help.
Well,
you watch out. It's coming down. No, it's not coming down. I'm serious. I'm serious. Anyways, other than the Dave Weinbaum Show, where you are now, where can people find you? And is there a vote involved locally or?
So, and thank you, Dave. I do have a Facebook page, and which is kind of comical because in my life I've never had social media, and my contact for this, getting involved in this, said you got to set up Facebook, and I'm like, I don't do Facebook. I've never had Facebook, so I learned. I got Facebook. It's a little. It looks like it was set up by a 60-year-old man and not a. I told somebody I should, if it wasn't illegal, I'd hire like a 10-year-old. To build my Facebook page because they could do it in half the time. I sat on this morning trying to figure out how I linked your radio program to my Facebook. I got it figured out though. But anyway, so I do have a Facebook page. It's just Larry Marty, Marti. You can go on and find me there. I post what I can. I have a lot of people that will post stuff for me or link me to stuff. And then, yes, really important, April 8th. These off-cycle elections traditionally have about an 8% or less voter turnout. 8%.
Okay, so it's important to get out there and vote.
And even
I think this guy's good. I recommend him. He's great.
I appreciate that, Dave. And it is. If you can't vote, if you're going to be out of town, you can absentee vote. But do go vote. Yeah.
Hey, Casey Marr. Hi, Dave, from Larry's 4'10" Italian wife. Did you? Oh wait, she said, forget about it.
Yeah.
No, she didn't say that.
No, she would.
That's pretty funny, right there.
I figured she'd
I don't care who you are. That's funny. Anyways, nice, great to talk to you. And by the way, my wife, she called me a natural disaster last week, And I said, I'm not a natural disaster. I work very hard at it. I work really hard at it, for God's sakes, you see? So you got to end with a joke.
Yeah,
all right. Larry, thank you so much
Thank
for
you, Dave.
coming in.
I appreciate it.
And don't
sir.
forget to take those things have to come off now.
Well, that I can't get my hat on over them.
I know. Okay. All right.
Thank you,
I
Dave.
feel safer.
Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Stay in touch.
Thank you,
okay.
sir.
Thank you. All right. That's Larry Marty. Okay. Thank you, sir. And let's do a couple clips. What do you think? Yeah. All right. Let's do a couple of clips. Oh, you know what we want to do? I want to do the Steve Martin thing. Okay. This thing is hilarious. You got to listen to this. All right. So he's getting that on right now, and this is funnier than hell. I mean, just you got to listen to this. Hopefully that's what. Oh.
In the evening, and he said, "Steve, I'm so excited. I've just finished a new song, and I just have to tell somebody." And I said, "Oh, great. What's the title?" And he said, 47 Ways to Leave Your Lover. And I said, "Paul, what if it were 50? 50 ways to leave your lover." And there was a long pause. And he said, "Go on." And I said, "Well, 50 has a nice ring to it, and 47 sounds a little awkward." And he said, "But, I've got 47. I can't think of any more." And I said, "Make a new plan, Stan." And he said, 48. I said, "Don't need to be coy, Roy. Drop off the key, Lee." He said, "Okay, 50, great. Hey, thanks. And I'm sorry if I interrupted anything." I said, "Don't worry, I was just here cooking a chicken." And he said, "Oh, really? How are you preparing it?" And I said, "Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme." And now look it up.
4 months ago, when we sent a ship through, it was shot at 17 times. Ships haven't been able to go through for over a year without being shot at. Freedom of navigation is basic. It's a core national interest. And President Trump has said, we will restore that, and we will be unrelenting. I want to be very clear. This campaign is about freedom of navigation and restoring deterrence. The minute the Houthis say, we'll stop shooting at your ships, we'll stop shooting at your drones, this campaign will end. But until then, it will be unrelenting. We got the reports last night, Maria. The Houthi capital felt like an earthquake. Dozens and dozens of precision heavy munitions dropping precisely on the targets that we wanted to hit, sending a very clear message. And the message is clear to Iran as well. And the president said it in his truth. Your support of the Houthis needs to end immediately. We will hold you accountable as the sponsor of this proxy. And I echo his statement. We will not be nice about it. This is not the Biden administration. The message is clear. We will come after the Houthis until they stop shooting at our ships, and the Iranians better stay out of it.
And there's so many implications to this. I remember last year when this was happening, basically every day or every other day that our ships would get harassed by these rebels. And what ended up happening from an economic perspective as well, many commercial ships were afraid to even go into that route in the Red Sea. They were going around the Horn, and it was costing much more money, sending oil prices higher because it was much more expensive for the longer travel. So it's not just a national security issue, but an economic one as well.
100%. And the president understands that. Global commerce, when it's threatened by effectively pirates and piracy, and you have to divert and go an extra 2 weeks costing millions and then eventually billions of dollars, you're being held hostage by a terrorist organization. Remember, the Biden administration took off the foreign terrorist organization designation of the Houthis.
That's right.
President Trump restored it. We're squeezing them economically. We are pounding them militarily. By the way, to the Houthis, this isn't a one-night thing. This will continue until you say, we're done shooting at ships, we're done shooting at assets. We don't want a long, limited war in the Middle East. We don't care what happens in the Yemeni civil war. This is about stopping the shooting at assets in that critical waterway to reopen freedom of navigation, which is a core national interest of the United States. And Iran has been enabling the Houthis for far too long. They better back off.
Your home is your castle, you don't need unwanted hassle. Don't let those creatures move in to stay. Let us protect your investments, that's what we're all about. Plank, Termite, and Pest Control will save the day.
Plank is locally owned and family operated right here in Rolla, a Google preferred business. Our customer service and your satisfaction is our #1 goal. So call Plank today at 368-3333.
Plank, Termite, and Pest Control will save the day.
With warmer temperatures right around the corner and allergies ramping up, now's the time to get those AC units serviced. At Hartley's, we pride ourselves in offering outstanding service with fast response times. With proper maintenance, you can make those hot days be a lot cooler and remove those pesky allergens that always seem to find their way into your home. Call us today so you can be living a much cooler and healthier life. Hartley's, community born, community raised, community serving.
Call Hartley's Climate Control today at 573-368-3163.
Never be too coy to tell your friends and family about koi sushi and hibachi. Celebrate the best Chinese-Japanese restaurant in the Midwest. Call 573-426-5551 to make a reservation or order takeout. Locally owned, 1808 North Bishop, Rolla, Missouri.
We can sum up McDonald's new crispy chicken sandwich in one word. Crispy, but also juicy and tender. Okay, it's crispy, juicy, tender. All one word? But then, also pickle. Oh, and potato bun, which is 2 words. Okay, we can't sum up our new crispy chicken sandwich in one word, so you'll just have to try it to understand it. Order ahead on the McDonald's app at participating McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Merrill's Quarry and Asphalt, 40 years serving cities, counties, and everyday businesses with driveways for people who live and work in our little piece of heaven right smack dab in the middle of America. Call 573-578-9101 for your free estimate of rocking, rolling, paving, driveways, sealing, and striping too. That's 573-578-9101 for your free estimate.
Your home is your castle, you don't need unwanted hassle. Don't let those creatures move in to stay. Let us protect your investments, that's what we're all about. Plank, Termite, and Pest Control will save the day.
Plank is locally owned and family operated right here in Rolla, a Google preferred business. Our customer service and your satisfaction is our #1 goal. So call Plank today at 368-3333.
Plank, Termite, and Pest Control will save the day.
Busy schedule? Let your locally owned Price Chopper help you save time with online shopping. It's easy. Sign up to tcmarkets.com or download our mobile app in the App Store or Google Play. Create an account and browse through the categories and choose the items you need. When you place your order, your personal shopper will get all of the items you've selected, taking the same care you would and following your notes. We offer free curbside pickup, so you don't even have to get out of your car. Start your online order today and no online shopping fee for a limited time. Go to tcmarkets.com or download our mobile app to get started. Price Chopper. Fresher savings every day. Acar Real Estate, where experience matters. 532 million sold since 2003, the #1 sales volume in Phelps County. As a client for decades, I can say they are the best in mid-Missouri. Call 573-368-7355. That's 573-368-7355 for the best real estate experience you'll ever have.
Gotta reach 'em, see it right now.
Insurance going up like crazy? Daniel and Henry Insurance is one of the largest private insurance companies in the world. Richard Boyette, 314-444-5011. He's my guy at Daniel and Henry for 10 years. Business or personal, call Richard at 314-444-5011. He's the best.
Maybe it's for a kitchen you've always wanted. Maybe it's just to have a little extra room. Whatever the reason you're considering a new home loan, it's good to know that Town & Country Bank will guide you in the right direction. Our experienced local lenders are here to help you with a new home construction, remodeling projects, and fixed and adjustable rate home loans. You can even start the process online by clicking Online Mortgage Center at tcbanks.com. Smart, friendly solutions. Town & Country Bank. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Hi there, we're back. Yeah, I was just squinching into there to see whether we were on or not. Do you ever get caught like in the middle of something like that? It sounds like a, you know what it sounds like? It sounds like a Carlin joke. Why don't you play Carlin real quick? All right.
We would like to pre-board those passengers traveling with small children.
But what about those passengers traveling with large children? Suppose you have a 2-year-old with a pituitary disorder. You know, a 6-foot infant with an oversized head. They might tell you you're on a non-stop flight. Well, I don't think I care for that. No, I insist that my flights stop. Preferably at an airport. It's those sudden, unscheduled cornfield and housing development stops that seem to interrupt the flow of my day.
Oh my God. And I didn't do that on purpose either. I went like this, you know, squinting to see whether or not I was on. And then that popped in my mind, Carlin. You know, that's pretty funny stuff.
So apparently after producing the show for, 4 years now, I guess it is, I knew exactly where you were going without even having to say it.
See, that's good because we were just talking about Carlin yesterday. That's why we rehearse.
Yep.
All right, we get little things from rehearsal into our little brains, my little brain, not yours, and suddenly something clicks, and you got to do it, you know. So that and it works, I believe. Hey, let us know what you think. Call 573-578-2700. That's 573-578-2700. Get it off your chest, or just call and say hello. Doesn't matter. Okay, so let's talk about the astronauts that finally got home. You know, they're demonizing Elon Musk right now terribly. They're going to his Tesla shops and they're setting Teslas on fire. And look what this guy does. He's a real patriot, this guy. Forget the Doge things for a second. He went to pick up. I mean, we're not talking about he had a Uber go get these people. He had an expensive space flight go and deliver more of the people in this. Apparently, it was a space satellite, which was taking people, and I guess they stayed there for a while, and they're supposed to come home. Well, these people were supposed to go home within days of being there, maybe 20, 30 days. They were stuck there for 9 months. And what did our president do back then? Absolutely nothing. Biden was going to leave them out there to die. Okay, they were there. And so finally, SpaceX from Elon Musk comes to the rescue. And it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. Okay, let's see. I got some more people here. Harris Karen. Who are you supporting for school board? I'm supporting a guy that was just here. He sounded great to me. I don't know who is Harris Karen. Do I know
her? Karen Harris. She's a local person here.
Yeah,
her and her husband are very conservative people involved in some of the local efforts and all that. So yeah, I'm definitely aware of them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I've met you, and if I did,
and that's the sad part too. And I thought that was a great point brought up by Larry, is that sometimes it's the main elections that get the focus, but here a school board can greatly affect, obviously, what happens with our public schools. And yet, roughly 8% turnout. We got to do better than that.
Oh, that's for sure. I mean, this is a big deal, all right? And I was wondering, because I haven't heard much about it. He says only 8% of the people get out to vote.
Yeah.
This is a big deal, and this guy sounds great, and he's going to have your best interests, your children's best interests at heart. And he's actually a local guy, even though he's moved around a bunch. His whole family was here for all that time. They took their vacations. Where? Rolla, Missouri. Hey, great place to be and take a vacation, mind you. But they could have gone anywhere in the world,
And that may have given him the ability to also see how school boards operate in other states and areas in the country to see, hey, what also doesn't work and we don't need to have here in our schools.
Well, he talked about Oregon. He talked about Denver.
Yep.
Denver's turned into quite the place.
Yeah. Say the least.
Sanctuary cities and towns. Boy, they've gone off the. I was there in the 60s. Having gone to school there was supposedly for a wrestling scholarship, but that didn't turn out because the day I got to practice, it was all locked up, and there was a sign that says "No more wrestling," or something to that effect. And so that's something that cost my old man a lot of money. And when I was able to get into the restaurant business and moved to Rolla about a year and a half after I got into Rolla, which was about my about my third year in the business, to open up the Rolla store. I invited my father down about a year later, and he moved here, and I never he was upset. He was not having a good play out in Chicago, and he had some things happen to him. And so him coming here, he was still pissed off at a bunch of stuff, and yet he got into his business mode, and he was great. He liked it here, and he took up golfing, and he was good at it. He used to play with Billy. What's his last name? Billy Key. Oh, yeah, they used to be good friends, and his wife, and nice people, and it was great to have him here, and we had along just dandy. And I talked to one of my friends last night. I mean, I didn't have a lot of time, and I know his name is Randy Vest, and he's he was McDonald's Hamburger University. He was the dean of Hamburger University, very deep into the McDonald's structure and stuff like that, and it was the best friend I had at McDonald's. And boy, did I need friends at McDonald's. Yeah, are you going to say something?
Well, one thing I didn't get to say to Larry, which he mentioned, he went to Mizzou, right? Did I get that correct?
Yeah.
Mizzou got knocked out of March Madness last night, first round, and they got eliminated as a 6th seed to Drake University. So Mizzou
Drake
Tigers
hasn't been there since 1971.
Yep, and
so
Mizzou Tigers bounced, didn't even get a win in March Madness this year. Got
wow.
bounced in the first round last night. Yep.
What about S&T?
So unfortunately for S&T, the men's season did come to an end. They had a very dramatic comeback win in the first round. So they went into the regionals part of Division II March Madness, essentially. And again, number 1 seed in the Midwest region. They were losing by double digits to the 8th seed with 3 minutes left to go. They come all the way back to tie the game, go to overtime, and they win it to set up the next matchup. But they took on UMSL, who was a conference opponent. We'd already beaten them twice. Yep. And UMSL, unfortunately, knocked the S&T men out, and so they are now out of the tournament. Their season's over. But they had a great season. Their coach, Bill Walker, won the Great Lakes Valley Conference Coach of the Year. Several of their players won conference mention. So they had a best season since 1995-96.
Wow.
And first time in 29 years they were in Division II March Madness.
How about the high schools?
So the high schools, both Rolla teams were eliminated, but they both had great years. Won well over 20 games this year.
Yeah.
Even in St. James, the Lady Tigers won over 20 games and made all the way to the Elite Eight in the state finals before getting knocked out last weekend. So they were one win away from going to the state Final Four. So
okay, a lot of good news from the sports around here. It's kind of difficult when you're going to small town schools, because you get a lot of the more people in a school, the better the schools generally are at their athletic teams. Let's talk a little bit about Andrew Bailey, the AG from Missouri, who sued the Chinese government, and they won. They won a absent. They never showed up to court, and I forget exactly what they were suing him for, but what it was. Do you remember?
I think it was about the farmland issue, how people have been buying farmland and they were from other countries here in Missouri. And
I had it in two places here.
And that, from what I understand, was...
here it is. Sues China for pandemic. That's what he did.
Okay.
He sued him for the pandemic, and he won.
Wow.
And he won $20 billion. And he said, if you don't pay up, we're going to confiscate your land in Missouri. Sounds like, you know what? That sounds like they have a precedent now.
Yeah, I think so.
For all the other states to get rid of these Chinese farms that are close to military bases, complicated by the fact that they had like 30 to 50,000 Chinese aliens come in to this country. A lot of them fighting age. In terms of most of them were single men.
Yep.
What the hell were they here for?
I'd be very curious what Bill and Don's opinion of that win is, because that's a huge win. Like you said, that might be Missouri they're being the front runner and setting a precedent for other states to follow now.
Yeah.
This get very interesting.
Exactly. So, all right. So Trump has a 44 approval from 27%, not seen in 35 years. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but in this one particular poll, it's an amazing victory, and no one's reached that for 35 years. Zelensky is going to make the deal. He's going to shake Trump's hand and shut his mouth, hopefully. And now Trump is talking to Putin. They're going to close the deal on the jewelry, all the other stuff that's in these mineral rights, and that's going to be very helpful to balance the budget, so to speak, of all the money they cost in that war. Now I'm reading stuff that's just ridiculous, and I don't even want to give it credit, but. There's a Kash Patel. It's not him so much as him saying news. And there was something posted that said that all these Democrats and a few Republicans were getting all sorts of money kickbacks for supporting the war with Russia, the Ukraine war with Russia. Now, I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. That's why I don't want to name any names. But we're talking about it well over $1 billion between all these congressmen and women, and some of them are Republicans. Anyways, that we'll see if that pans out, because I didn't hear it on the news. And generally they check things out like that. At least Fox does. Obviously, the mainstream media doesn't, and they're dying anyways. They're so stupid. It's unbelievable. So the Kennedy files were released, unredacted, and so far, no big news. Of course, they're still looking at them, but nothing to say, apparently, about that. Both Barry, that's Barack, and Joe, screamed in their beginnings of their presidencies. They screamed that they were going to get all our agencies and stuff. They will all be accountable for anything that went over budget, or these guys are screaming for it, and they all fired a bunch of people. 400,000, I believe, Barack Obama fired. So why are they so pissed off Why are they so pissed off at Trump and Elon Musk? And they're going after Elon Musk, and they're laughing at it, and they're condoning not the violence of going to his Tesla stores, and which is, by the way, the only car made in the USA explicitly, and burning these things up, damaging them, throwing rocks through their windows and things like that. I've heard now that 3 of them have been picked up, and they're charged with felonies. That's 10 years maybe. I mean, and they got to do a lot of that. So, oh my goodness, we've chatted enough to where we have our next guest, and we built up the crowd for our next guest, and we're holding up his book right now. And anyways, he's a strange
here it comes.
Author of Rules for Defeating Radicals, hates rhinos, loves Wyoming pizza. Please welcome, all the way from Missouri, Chris Adamo. Yes, you are a strange kind of guy. Are you mad now?
Good morning, Dave. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
At least it wasn't outright slander like in the last couple of times when you say I have.
The last time was perfect. You said it was slander, and it wasn't. That was slander on your part.
You were accusing me of having some sort of affinity for Liz Cheney.
Wait a second. I said nothing about Cheney in the introduction, and you accused me of that. Now I'm doing what you want everyone else to do to liberals, and put it right back in their face. You see how I did that? I learned from you.
You did it dishonestly. So there's a difference.
What do you mean I did it dishonestly? What does that mean?
There's a difference there.
I don't get it.
How are you, sir?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm sitting around. I've been fuming about some things. Did you get a chance to watch that video link I sent you?
Actually, I did. I think it was the one with the woman and her.
Dr. Simone Gold talking to Jordan Peterson.
In fact, I got stuff about her. Yeah,
boy, did that not raise your blood pressure?
Simone Gold pushed by a crowd into the Capitol after the doors opened by others. Everything was fine until after the FBI's most wanted list. They put her on the FBI's most wanted list. Tell us how that went.
Well, if you get a chance, but people should watch the video. Do a search on Dr. Simone Gold talking to Jordan Peterson. And there's a long interview, but the short one that I shared here with Dave, there's a 16-minute clip, and she's talking about this whole situation at the Capitol, this January 6th, and our side for months, years afterwards, apologized because we shouldn't have engaged in violence, we shouldn't have damaged and trespassed and vandalized and whatever, and this was a total absolute leftist setup. There was so much anger, righteous anger, after the stolen 2020 election that more than 1 million people gathered in Washington to protest it, and the left had to take the wind out of our sails somehow. And so they set up this January 6th thing, and they had all these arrests of people claiming that they had, they were engaged in sedition. They were trying to overthrow the government. I had one good friend there that made the statement. I won't mention his name, but he's in public office. He made the statement, and he was absolutely right. He says, it wasn't a coup because we're not still there.
That's
you have
right.
1.5 million people showing up for a coup. You're not going to get rid of them.
Yeah.
It was when Trump came out, he said, look, make it peaceful. Don't trespass. Don't do anything wrong. Go home. And they still treated it as if it was an absolute riot. It was an absolute rebellion against the government. And our side accepted that and apologized for that.
Yeah, that's a sickness right there.
That's the part that always enables that.
Why your book is important. Not that I want to give you any more credit than you deserve, but that's why it's important to know that our side was apologizing for something that never happened.
And you, first of all, when you do that, and I'm telling this to all those well-meaning Christians out there who want to be just really nice, if you apologize for something you didn't do, you're lying. Okay, so for starters, it's wrong to apologize if you didn't do it. Secondly, you're validating the accusation. You apologize just to be nice and try and get along. You have just validated. I don't care how absurd the accusation is. If the minute you apologize for it, you're validating it. So yeah, this is where we get it wrong. We've been on defense over January 6th for all these years, and the left committed crime after crime after crime in involvement with it, right down to destroying the evidence. You know, I was talking about Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, right in there between Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi. They destroyed the exculpatory evidence because they had a narrative. They wanted to put us on defense with it. And so there's evidence proving that they were lying. They're committing perjury. They're obstructing justice. They destroy it. And we sit back and do nothing. And I could show you that in December of 2022, the Republicans released a counter report to this J6 committee.
Yeah.
And this counter report essentially comes out and says, well, they didn't want to bring in troops to secure the Capitol because they didn't want the bad optics, because it might look like they were being oppressive, like back when they were pushing back against the Black Lives Matter crowd. It gave.
You're talking about they offered them up
exactly
to 20,000 people. Even Pelosi said they did this.
But the Republicans gave them cover. This December 2022 report says, well, they were just afraid to look overly militant, so they didn't bring in these troops, whatever. That was an excuse. That was a lie, and the Republicans gave them cover. What you just mentioned about Pelosi, it was deliberate. It was all part of the setup. It was designed to take the wind out of our sails, and we, conservative America, we let it work because we went on the defensive.
What was her motive, do you think, to confess? Nancy Pelosi.
Possibly when she finally did get around. First of all, either she was above the legal blood alcohol limit and she was just mouthing off, or there's several of them, including Zuckerberg, who between November and January suddenly come out and say, you know what, we haven't been doing things quite right. And what they're trying to do, it's called damage control. Yeah. They're trying to put a good face on the absolute illegal suppression of truth that they engaged in, the absolute bias in which they engaged in, because they know that their gig is up and it's all going to come out in the open. They want to say, yeah, well, we confessed, we admitted to it. Yeah. So, we're going to let bygones be bygones. And problem is, our side says, well, okay, they said they're sorry. No, we're in a dangerous situation right now. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Yeah. We're in a situation where the left is going to dominate by any means possible. And if we sit and color inside the lines to try and be nice and try and build bridges and try and find common ground while they rampage, they're going to run the country.
Well, they're not giving that up. That's for sure.
You're absolutely right.
They're going to have. They certainly don't have the approval ratings of the country. I mean, it's all 80 to 20%.
Yeah, it's that lopsided. But here's the thing: when you have a dictator get in, some Saddam Hussein kind of character get in, and they conduct an election, you know how much the vote he gets typically? 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, or if it's 99%, they find out who that 1% is, and those people they all commit suicide or something. They all they all have a stroke the same day or something.
Yeah.
And the point is that leftists, they only need to get enough of the vote, enough of the support to where they can get to a point where you can't oppose them. And then they don't care if it's 99%. They don't care that many hate them. So right now it's 80% against them. They are still trying to dominate. They're still pulling dirty tricks. And one of the other things I'm sure you're going to talk about is this whole thing with all of a sudden we have international policy being dictated by second tier so-called judges, Obama appointees and Biden Obama appointees and all these leftists. And they're assuming control of the country. They're coming out and saying, no, you can't implement federal policy. There's no constitutional basis for it whatsoever.
Yeah.
The only basis is they initiate an edict, they issue an edict, and our side says, oh, well, we've got a color inside the lines.
I got a guy coming in. He's scheduled for 10. He's here early. Can you believe that? So get your ass over there. What the hell are you doing? So I've got this deal where I've got these two guys coming in. They're both reps, state reps, and they're good guys. and they want to actually do the show if I ever go out of town.
Oh,
I think I might be planning my demise some way. But I don't know. I don't know for sure. So he comes in. He's never been early in his life. He's 40.
Whoa.
He's 40 minutes early. 40 minutes early, and the other guy's not here.
Hey, it's spring break. I'm on regular people time. See, state rep time is that if you're 15 minutes late, you're 20 minutes early. So I'm still on real people time. So.
Did you not want me to ask you as you're sitting there flipping a script or something, whatever the hell you were doing?
I'm doing a little homework for my part-time job. Is that okay?
Oh, no, it's
Okay.
fine. It's fine. It's just that you're sitting there, and here I've got a guest, and you're sitting there, and it's 40 minutes before you're supposed to go on. Look at it, 40 minutes.
I'm a public servant. I work all the time for the people.
He's also a chicken farmer. Did you know that? Anyways, this is Chris Adamo.
Yeah, we talked before, Chris. How are you?
Good to see you again, Don.
Yeah,
and I appreciate your efforts. And we need answers. Matter of fact, our Attorney General, if you got any connections, we've got to do something about the fact that right now we got judges who, if they're not stopped, and no law is anything but a little bit of ink on a sheet of paper, unless it's properly enforced. And if these judges are not stopped, they're essentially assuming control of the country. We talk about insurrection and sedition. These judges jumping in. I put it this way. I have a question for John Roberts. Okay. Chief Justice John Roberts. If I could ask him a question, it's on
Get John on the phone.
Get him. On September 10th, 2001, September 10th, the day before, right? Day before 9/11, on September 10th, 2001, which of these low-level judges would he have said should have been in charge of international policy and dealing with those Al-Qaeda immigrants in this country? Which one of those judges should actually have been dealing with these people right before 9/11? Or should it have been the federal government protecting the American people from a terrorist attack that was impending?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I think he'd. Well, who else? What else this guy Boasberg did? He also indicted our friend Jeff Zink's son.
So Boasberg was part of the Russia collusion hoax,
and he was part of the Russia collusion deal, where he represented. Basically Hillary's point of view, and
he advanced Hillary's point of view. So you're absolutely right. So
it ended up in a impeachment of Donald Trump, and
phony impeachment, right?
So
we've got two scenarios here. We got two possibilities. We're at a fork in the road for America. Okay, we have the proper one is we get people in those seats who are constitutional jurists who do their best to say, what does the Constitution, what does the rule of law say about a particular case sitting in front of them? What do they do to uphold the law and to ensure those documents that the founders signed, that America ratified? What do we do to do that to keep the country intact? Okay, that's one. That's a real judge. Okay, or the present scenario that we're in, and it's going this way, and if it doesn't get fixed, it's like a cancer going into stage 4. Is we have people that you put a black robe on them, somehow they get into that spot, and from that point forward, they make up laws. They become little monarchs who make up laws on their own, and they attack their political opposition, like Jeff Zink's son, purely for political purposes, and they run the country from the bench. Well, this is the two options we have.
And by the way, are they elected?
No, they're appointed.
They're appointed.
And once they get confirmed, and that confirmation, we ought to talk all day about that too, because that's become a total joke. Once they get confirmed, though, suddenly that declares them not only above the law in their own behavior, but able to make up laws to attack their political opponents. I mean, this is not America.
Well, doesn't Boasberg have to come up with some legal authority that tells him he can tell the government, he can tell the president, he can tell the Secretary of State that they are being unlawful? He can't order them to bring back the people that have already been sent back to Venezuela, can he?
I'll tell you what they can do, Dave, and I'm not trying to just be cynical. They can do whatever we let them get away with.
Okay, well,
and that's
how are we going to stop them?
Well, how many articles of impeachment has Mike Johnson had filed in the Congress against these judges at this point? The minute if
what Trump wants to do, but
if you're a doctor and you wrongfully kill a single patient, you're not going back into that operating room, because we're going to check out why you did that. Okay, if you're a so-called judge and you trample the rights of one innocent citizen, okay, now if somebody beats up on you in the alley and they put you in the hospital for 3 months, they have violated your rights and they're a criminal. If that judge
tears up your Tesla,
yeah, exactly. But if that judge tramples your rights by throwing you in a jail cell for 3 months, is that no less of him harming you as an individual? And if there's no legal precedent for it, he's doing it illegally.
Right.
And so at this point, he becomes the criminal. Are we going to call him a criminal and treat him as one? Unless we do, he's going to keep doing it.
Well, that's where we get another guy from this show, the McCluskeys, or guys and gals. He's working on this day and night. He's representing Ryan Zink, and he's that was the judge that did this to Ryan Zink, where he had to drop 2 felonies because of the Supreme Court, and then gave him a 60-day jail sentence for a nothing burger minor, whatever it was. Which he never did.
You saw that with that video with Simone Gold.
He never did anything wrong.
Right.
All right.
If they could get you on, this was not a matter of protecting the Capitol from harm, from an insurrection, from sedition. This was a matter of, as Dr. Simone Gold said in that video that you and I discussed, it was a matter of them making an example out of her, a big enough example out of her, the hardship they were able to cause her, to scare the rest of us into forsaking. Now, what's our First Amendment rights? It's free speech, religion, and the right to peaceably assemble for redress of grievances. And they shut that one down.
A jury of our peers.
Yeah.
Don't forget that one.
Yeah.
96% people voted for Biden in D.C., and that's where they're being tried. Yeah. That should be a factor too, shouldn't it?
Exactly. And again, you hear people that are doctor shopping so they can get a doctor to give them narcotics and things like this.
Yeah.
If you're caught doctor shopping, that's drug trafficking. You get in trouble for that, right? Well, you have these courts, and they're judge shopping in order to get a judge that leans with their political view. That never supposed to be about what the judge's decision is made upon. The judge is supposed to be above that, and they clearly aren't. And we can go to the Supreme Court, where it's like people say, before you ever take this case before the Supreme Court, there's those 4 lefty so-called jurists, and you could tell before you ever go in the room, no matter what evidence you present, you can tell what they're going to do, how they're going to decide based on one thing, is how does it affect the leftist agenda? If it promotes the leftist agenda, they're all for it.
Hey, Chris, I would argue there might be 5 leftists.
Yeah. And at least 4 of them, though, are absolute assurances. And frequently there are 5. And there's a big mistake. President Trump made a couple of big mistakes in his first term. One of them, I think, was the whole Operation Warp Speed, and the other one was Amy Coney Barrett. And unfortunately, I don't, in my lifetime, What's that?
You can't always predict what a judge is going to do.
To Chris's point, though, is that for those four, that's lockstep. You can guarantee that.
Yeah.
On two of them, at least, Roberts and Barrett, the Roberts doesn't have any trouble at all bending the law to make sure that he gets invited to the cocktail parties, right?
Yeah, maybe even to
I think
Island.
I think Don's being very, very gracious there. To be honest with you, because Roberts did a complete flip with Obamacare. It was back around 2012 or so, and what happened there? Now, at the time, I'll be honest with you, I'd never heard of Jeffrey Epstein at this point. But seeing other circumstances that we had watched unfold elsewhere, it's like they've got something on him. That's what I said. And back then, my guess was, okay, so the National Security Agency, they showed up at his house one day and said, hey, we've got these examples of you looking at kiddie porn, and these are going public if you don't support Obamacare. Okay, so that was a guess on my part. Now, since then, the whole Epstein's Island thing has come out, but we've seen something with Roberts where Roberts, when they do his confirmation hearings, he understood and absolutely bluntly supported the Constitution and the rule of law. How are you going to decide on this case, Judge Roberts? And it was real simply this: I'm not going to side with somebody based on do I like them or not. I'm going to say, how does their case apply? Or how does the Constitution and the rule of law apply in their case? And if it goes for the minority, great. If it goes for the majority, great. If it's actually the Constitution. I mean, he was just very upfront about this. It was a rather famous quote at the time because he shut down the Democrats that were trying to get him to side this way and that way on particular decisions. And he was great. And he did great. And then all of a sudden with that Obamacare decision, which the whole future of the nation's medical system, billions of dollars, trillions of dollars hinged on that one decision, all of a sudden he flipped. And since then, he's been little more than a pawn of the left.
Well, they got something on him, I think.
Or 3 words: follow the money.
Yep.
Follow the money and follow,
follow the traffic.
I don't know whether it was made up or not, but they got a picture of him and the woman that was involved with Epstein, who kind of got the girls together. What's her name? She's in jail now. It was his girlfriend.
Her last name was Maxwell. No relation.
Maxwell. Yeah, his cousin Maxwell over there. And see, I didn't. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mention. He said, "Don't ever mention this, Dave." All right, but I did, so it's out. But she apparently was sitting there right next to the judge.
Well, like I said, there is too much. There's far too much of a sudden switch where he, in Star Wars, you went over to the dark side, and we saw that with Roberts. And since then, it's been embarrassing. I mean, his Obamacare decision was embarrassing.
Yeah,
it was something that a 9th grade civics teacher could rebut, and yet he was given over to it. And from that point forward, at critical moments, he becomes their pawn.
Well, there was a story at about that time widely reported that a staffer of obviously anonymous, right, had overheard the arguments that were going on theoretically behind closed doors. But you can imagine over there the justices probably walk up amongst themselves and have these discussions. But the story went something like this, and I'm probably going to get some of the details wrong. But just Roberts' contention was that, if we make this decision like we should make it, right, based on the law and the precedent, and in fact, including returning it back to Congress to fix the defects, which they found, then there will be rioting in the streets.
Yep.
Well, so that is not the justice's concern. That's executive, right?
At that point, he puts the rioters in control.
And exactly.
They control the country anyways.
And justice is no longer blind.
Yeah.
And the whole basis of our legal system strictly depends on justice being blind. And whenever you start as a justice and the court system of making decisions based on what you think people will think about what you did, then you have lost the justice system. It is no
They've
longer
abandoned it. You're absolutely right, Don. And
And
at
where
that
did
point,
he come off having the gall to tell Trump don't impeach? And there's another judge that said that don't impeach him.
Yeah.
No, we don't. Well, that's none of his damn business.
Absolutely right. They have no legal jurisdiction over free speech.
And this
but
guy,
they will
worthy
exercise
of
that.
impeachment, I believe, and so does half the country or more. That this guy ought to be impeached. He's clearly out of bounds. Clearly out of bounds.
And like you said, there's several others along with him. The whole course of the country this past week has been hijacked by leftist Biden-Obama appointed so-called judges, and we either shut them down or we submit to them because that's how the system is right now, and that's what they're planning on now. In the past, they have gotten away with these things, and our side has been the enabler because we don't want to cause strife. We don't want to cause possible violence in the streets. Well, what are they committing? They're committing violence in the streets. We don't want to do all these bad things. We want everybody to get along, and we get along by surrendering. We don't have any room to surrender.
Right, and no good right now. Dean Williams, Democrats are criminals, capital letters. Wait a minute, capital letters. How about that? Democrat judges are weak, bought, and treasonous. Well,
and I would expound on his statement.
You're probably right. Looks that
I would
way.
expound on that word weak. Okay, they're weak in their actual role of upholding the law, but what they are is corrupt. It's a lot more than weakness. They are given over to an evil agenda. And they see themselves now in a position to implement the leftist agenda through the back door, because they tried doing it by overtaking the media and propagandizing us into ignorance, and it almost worked. And then they tried to censor any opposing speech, and that almost worked. And then Elon Musk came along and bought Twitter, and all of a sudden we the people have a voice again, and so that didn't work. Then they tried to do it, let's not forget this, then they tried to do it by assassinating Trump last summer.
That's right.
And that situation could not possibly have worked out any worse for the left, because of the fact that if the bullet had completely missed him, it would have been, well, maybe they were faking it or whatever. If they'd have taken him out, we'd have lost him, but it caught him in the ear. It was a miracle that it caught him in the ear and didn't kill him. It was just enough for us to see he'd been shot.
An eighth of an inch or above, his head would have been blown off.
Yeah, and that was the plan.
Well, on the impeachment stuff, I mean, I don't know how you couldn't, I don't care which side of the aisle you were on the Mayorkas impeachment. At worst, his activities were treasonous. At best, he's just our version of Baghdad Bob. And either way, whether it be treasonous or incompetence, was the only justification that the Congress had with impeaching him. And yet we made that decision not based on the protection of the people, but on political decisions alone. And therein lies the second danger that we have in this country, is whenever our public servants start making decisions based on the political ramifications and not how it affects their constituents, we have lost our country.
Now, did we willingly not impeach Mayorkas, or is that still an issue?
Well, he's no longer in office, so.
Well, what's the point of? Neither. Maybe.
Well, we're talking last year, though. The thing that needs to happen, and Don's right. Now, here's the part where our side drops the ball, and I think Johnson right now, Mike Johnson, is dropping the ball as we speak. Is that, well, we won't have the votes to get him out. Okay, do the impeachment anyway, bring forth the evidence anyway, and then you put a spotlight on every single representative who refuses to vote to remove him. And you say, when you see this crooked judge doing these evil deeds, these are the people that want him in the position to do that. And at that point, you make them pay the political price for their treachery, And we for us to get control of the judiciary, we first have to get control of the people's house, so that those representatives can do as Don says, and represent the people.
And one of the things I hate the worst up in the Capitol is that, we don't want our members to have to take a hard vote. And I always
yes, we do.
And I always say this in retort. It's like, well, every vote's a hard vote for somebody in the House. Yeah. So who is it that we're worried about having to take a hard vote here?
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, there's a bit of strategy involved, and majorities are great. But the truth is that I tell these freshmen who come in who get worried about a particular vote, I said, well, who was it that voted for you in the first place, right? Were those union reps and all of those folks, were they supporting you or your opponent?
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
They were supporting the opponent. So what makes you think by you not voting for this is going to change that dynamic at all if you have a challenger? So the reality is that whenever you make a vote like that, I like the passage in the Bible. I can't remember exactly where it is, but it basically goes like this. I wish that you were either hot or cold, but you're lukewarm and I spew you out of my mouth. So, make a decision. And then people will either like it or not like it, but they will respect you as long as you have a reason for doing what you're doing.
That's Revelation chapter 2. You're absolutely right, Don. And I'll tell you something else about this. I'd love to discuss it from the perspective of Revelation, but you nailed it. Here's the other side, and this is the side that the rhinos, the dirty little secret that they don't want you to know, is that you think a hard vote is difficult to uphold, to stand by. The most difficult thing to defend, if we deal with these things properly, the most difficult thing to defend is cowardice. If you took the wrong vote because you were a coward, that needs to be shown to the public. Sure. And that's why you either are or aren't fit for that office.
Let's go back to the impeachment thing. If you've committed a crime, if you've committed a provable crime, or you've overdone what you're supposed to do in your position, especially if it's an appointed one, I say impeach him anyways. I don't care whether or not he's in office or not office. You're making a point. And believe me, they ain't going to be wanting to be impeached, even if they're out of office. If not, they have to be, you have to accuse them of a crime. You have to investigate it, and you have to indict. They opened up our whole border, this guy, Mayorkas. He opened up our whole border. He's possibly responsible for the deaths of all the deaths and the rapes and all the other things that happened, including the whole Biden administration and all the Democrats.
Well,
they're
if we
responsible
had
for a lot of crimes. They ought to be indicted.
Okay, now, first of all, Dave, I want you to notice I am agreeing with you. Now, here's the dispute. A post office, meaning after you've been left office, you don't need to be impeached. The whole idea of impeachment is, well, you can't be indicted while you're in office. We'll impeach you, get you out of office, and then we'll actually file charges. They're out of office now. We don't even need to bother with that impeachment. I get your point, that they need that black mark on their record. Now, though, it's much more important to go back, do the real investigations like you're describing. And if they're guilty of a crime, then at that point, then they need to be brought up on charges for that crime. Because I always use the example, if you're a doctor and you deliberately go in and you give somebody strychnine in an injection, you've murdered them. You're a murderer. You're not a doctor at that point. You need to be tried as a murderer.
Why were they trying to impeach Trump after the supposed insurrection?
Right. Good question.
Okay, so they made it a point. We're going to impeach him again, and they want to impeach him right now.
This was strictly Democrat grandstanding.
To do it, but what the hell?
This was strictly.
People are really scared of impeachment one way or the other. I don't care what it is. I don't care if they're out of office for 5 years. Impeach this son of a bitch, and and let's go with all the other crimes that we found you doing.
Well, why wouldn't Mayorkas be indicted as a co-conspirator on human trafficking cases and fentanyl deaths?
Bingo.
I mean that without him, without his decisions,
by my count, he's a mass murderer of our people.
Well, he by his decisions, which would be the very definition of a co-conspirator, it was someone who is not directly involved with the crime, but enabled that crime to occur.
What do you mean not directly involved?
So
he
wasn't.
He prevented. He not only was a part of the crime, he prevented all of our ICE agents from going and doing something to keep these people out of our country.
So not a lawyer, but my understanding of what co-conspirator is that he wasn't the guy who robbed the bank. He was the guy who planned the bank robbery. And so that makes you a co-conspirator. Yeah. And at the very least, he's a co-conspirator in this issue. And that, I think, is easily provable because his policies put in place and his direction from his office prevented both ICE and the Border Patrol from actually doing their job. And so with intent, there is only one way that you can come to that conclusion is that it had to be intentional. And the only proof you need is the policies on the border prior to Biden taking over and Mayorkas being in that position, with the stay in Mexico policies and things like that, limited that illegal immigration and those criminal illegal aliens from crossing the border to very small numbers. Yeah. And so there is the only proof that you would need. And I think a jury of 12 of his peers would find the exact same thing.
But he is,
and I would add to that since Trump has gotten back into office, the fact that we have so quickly we're talking 8 weeks, 2 months ago from today, that has shut down. The border has shut down. That could have been done at any point. If it could have been done at any point, it means that what Don was describing there, it was deliberate, letting these criminals, these rapists, these murderers into the country. It was absolutely deliberate.
All right, I gotta give credit.
Finally, legal counsel is here.
Yeah, legal counsel is here. We have a lawyer. There's a lawyer here.
I advise all of you to stop talking right now.
Everything we say can and will be held against us.
Wait a minute. I gotta tell him this. Okay, he was here 40 minutes early.
Yeah,
Don May was here 40 minutes early. Yeah,
and here you are. You're 5 minutes late.
Well, first of all,
explain to him what I said.
Wait, hang on. Yeah, first of all, this clearly Don has nothing to do. Second, it's product placement. I had to go buy McDonald's.
Okay,
and get sweet
You're
tea.
absolved on that. Okay, on that account, I'm the only judge in this office here.
So, the way I explained it, Bill, you kind of stepped into it, was that I'm on real people time and Bill's still on state rep time. So real people time is your early. State rep time is if you're 15 minutes late, you're 20
you're both
minutes
state
early.
reps, aren't you?
Yeah, the legislature's changed me.
We are on spring break right now. Some of us, we get locked into a system and we stick with it. So
Don, don't tell the people we get a break.
Well, I don't get a break. I'm obviously doing my duty still. But
oh my God, this is something else. All right. Well, and say, huh?
There's a comment.
Okay, let's hear. The Godfather, Christopher Rizzini. Good morning, Dave and the crew. I would be honored if I could purchase a signed copy of your book, Mr. Adamo, and I ordered directly to you. Forget about it. Thank you for your informative topics.
That's a pretty good Chinese accent, by the way.
Thank you.
Just check that out. So.
He recognized
I like
it.
that one better.
He recognized it. Was that not Italian kind of stuff right there?
Dracula.
Forget about it. Come on, forget about it.
That sounds a little bit south and west of Italy, like towards Israel, maybe. A little Jewish Mediterranean trying to imitate Italian.
Jews and Italians are pretty much alike. In case you didn't notice, we all got big mouths. And most of the time, except for you, we're funnies. Okay, so welcome to the show, Bill.
I actually have to get going. It's been good. I really enjoyed being able to see you guys.
Get the handcuffs, quick.
JP, I'm going to be laughing about that for a while. I'm sorry, that was hilarious.
And you know what?
Count on Sesame Street, really.
You can stay on. Now, you guys, I'm trying to see whether these guys are worthy
This is like
together.
an audition, Bill, and I don't know if I told you that or not, but we're auditioning, so it's...
Well,
I had this idea a little late at night one night, and so
we would cover for you when you're gone.
Look, he's got a jacket on.
Yes.
We're gonna go clean up trash today in Rolla. That's what we're dressed for. We've been cleaning up trash.
I know. Really? Are you cleaning up
Don's
trash?
gonna come too. We're gonna head.
So this is my quick change. I go from Clark Kent to Superman, and, you know, with putting on a jacket.
The fix is in.
We're cleaning up debris today.
Adamo, the fix is in right here. These guys are fighting each other. I want you here as a team. If you're going to take over the show, if I'm on vacation, or if my wife kills me or something, which could happen any day, then
I'm shocked it hasn't happened already. To be perfectly honest, with you.
Really?
Yeah.
So can I jump in and get serious for a moment?
No.
Okay.
All right. These guys are going to take over the show one day. They want to do it by themselves. So I put up a little bit of a competition. So if you want to go ahead and ask any question.
So Bill and Don, seriously, I ask you guys, I implore you guys to do some investigating on what really just happened in the Wyoming legislature. Okay, because the Freedom Caucus just kicked butts in the Wyoming legislature. Wyoming was totally dominated by rhinos for years. That's how they ended up with Liz Cheney, and we could go down the list. And the Freedom Caucus started moving in and literally changing the landscape in the Wyoming legislature. And it's the Wyoming Senate. They still got some work to go. They're still dominated by rhinos, but they're changing that around as we speak. But if you look into that, because it's what needs to happen in Missouri, we've got to get to the point where because Missouri is another state where everybody, if you want to get elected, you say you're Republican, and yet they get to Jeff City and suddenly it's a lot more difficult to get basic Republican principles advanced. And so if you want to see how it's done, how you differentiate between the real conservatives and the rhinos, and how you confront the system on a systemic basis, I ask you guys to just look into that. It's just been absolutely amazing. And the Democrats, the leftists, the New York Times, and the rhinos themselves are just having a total meltdown over this, but they just done a stellar job.
Well, one of the things that we probably should do and would do the most good for the people of Missouri is have a session the exact same length as the Wyoming legislature.
Yeah.
I think it's like 4 weeks or something. And
for 6 weeks, I think. But yeah, you're right.
It's not very long. So that would be the most beneficial for the people of the state of Missouri.
Why? Yeah. What is that extra week's going to do?
Well, because, we can't do stuff like Senate Bill 4. Did I say that out loud, Bill? I
think you should.
Yeah.
Tell the people what that is. Not everybody's a genius like you guys.
Well, Senate Bill 4 was to turn a monopoly into an even bigger monopoly without a whole lot of controls. So yes, while there might have been some scant good things in there,
there's always a few crumbs.
Yeah, the premise for it was pretty weak from my perspective. And it essentially boils down to the time value of money. $1 in the investor-owned utilities pocket has the exact same value as the $1 in my pocket. And so over time, 20 years from now, those have the exact same value. And so the projected $86 million in savings is based on them being able to take my dollar and put it in their bank and draw interest on it. Well, I would submit to you, just like tax dollars, that dollar works a whole lot better in my pocket than theirs. Yeah. Now, there may be a bit to how rates may increase over time, but the premise that somehow the federal regulation prevented the investor-owned utilities from building baseload power, which is kind of where this thing's at. I'm getting too far into the weeds. But the reality is those were always their business decisions to make, regardless of what the federal regulations are. Well, now we see a regulatory environment that is going to allow utilities to move forward a lot easier. And so the whole premise of the necessity of this bill simply goes away with the Trump administration. So build as many power plants as you can in the next 4 years. Yeah. And so the reality is how does this affect rates long term? Well, they say if it turns out that they don't need that money, or if they find a bigger, better, faster, cheaper way, then they'll give the money back.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah. So you guys saw that right away. Well,
All right,
maybe some
Bill,
other
you want to respond?
No, I think Don is right about it. Senate Bill 4. I told everybody it was a no. I tried to go vote no, but the board closed before I got to my seat. But I think it was a bad bill. It allows power companies to kind of mess with your thermostat a little bit. It had projection to future rates. They were built in that if you're new, the data centers, they didn't have to pay back the securitized tariffs, kind of the bonds, right? But new customers who move to new utility providers do. So it seemed like there was a lot of cost shifting that went from customers paying it and then big guys not have to pay it to me. There was some good stuff in there. But overall, what I want as a customer is I want to just have an electric bill, and at the end of the month, I get the electric bill for the electricity I used. I don't want my electric bill to build in what they think electricity I'm going to use in the future, and I definitely don't want Ameren or Evergy trying to tell me what I should set my thermostat at. I want to set it whatever I want to.
Now, Don almost exclusively has changed the atmosphere out in Wyoming with his ability to get the Republicans to take over for the most part. What are you guys doing about it? Because you're both Republicans, aren't you?
Get my book.
So
get the book. Get his book.
Mongo only a pawn in Great Game of Life. So that's a Blazing Saddles reference. I'm sorry.
Blazing Saddles.
But
yes, thank you for
the
that.
truth is that, folks like Bill and I, that, you had said it earlier, Chris, you got to have the courage to be able to vote no and or yes, depending on the situation. But the most important thing for legislators, and I never say anything bad about how somebody votes, as long as they've got a reason for why they did what they did.
Right.
We might disagree, but that's the whole idea behind the legislature is
to vote for what you think is right.
Vote for what you think is
right. Even if you're the only person in that room, and you think that you're right and everyone else is wrong, your obligation is to do what?
To vote your God, your family, your country.
You vote what you think is right.
There are two kinds of laws or votes that we need to be taking. One of them, Don, you want the potholes fixed on Fifth Avenue, and I think the potholes should be fixed on First Avenue. I think it's more important. We can agree to disagree about that, but you have other issues, some of these bigger issues that are basic issues of principle. And they need to be brought back to that. And yes, they try to cloud the issue by throwing in little crumbs here and there for people. And yet, if it's a basic issue of principle, freedom, you mentioned, it sounds nice that Evergy is going to help you maintain the proper temperature of your house. No, that's a basic issue of personal freedom and rights. And if you vote wrong on that one, you're voting against those rights. And those things define that individual doing the voting. They define his character or his integrity as a person. And sadly, there does come a time to say, no, this is this guy being in service to something other than we, the people that he took an oath to support. There are cases like that, and they shouldn't get cover. They definitely shouldn't get cover in any circumstance. But the problem these days is, he calls himself a Republican. And so I don't want to violate Reagan's 11th commandment. So I don't want to be seen as too harsh with him. There comes a time to do that. That Liz Cheney person there is not one of us. And I'm not going to pretend she is just because she puts an R by her name. And so there does come a time where we have to say, yes, it's us versus them.
Well, the most, shouldn't say the most egregious. I found several things in there, but the one that has the most impact in Senate Bill 4 was the inclusion of into legislation smart meter charges and things like that. So what a smart meter is it not only does it read your electric back in some office somewhere so a meter reader doesn't have to go out there, but it also gives the utility the power to shut your electricity off on their whim.
Really?
Well, that is, and so if you want to, just we have automatic readers in the co-ops, and we have automatic readers, but in that particular case, that is an agreement between you, the ratepayer, and them, the utility provider. Why does that need to be legislated? You can simply do that with saying we're putting these meters in, and by the way, we have this authority to do this. there's nothing in legislation that would prevented them from doing that without us including it in this legislation. So we put a lot of things in that bill, which essentially gives that utility the power to blame what they're doing on the legislature.
Gives them cover.
And exactly,
So-
just gives them cover.
So why do these people like yourself, not necessarily you or him, why do they put themselves in that position? It's a horrible position to be in. Because you're getting blamed for stuff you didn't want to happen.
Because we're there for 8 years.
Okay. What else you got, Chris?
What else do I have? We talked earlier, you mentioned that the Democrats have a 27% approval rating nationwide. Okay.
Yeah.
And just to give you a couple of things that have gone really well this week, the New York Supreme Court struck down an effort by the city of New York and the Democrats throughout the state to give voting rights to non-citizens.
Yeah.
Okay. Here again, this is a no-brainer. If you're not an American citizen, and especially if you're here illegally, the only thing you have a right to is to be treated humanely as we boot your backside back to your original country and get you out of here. But they were giving them voting rights, and so the New York Supreme Court said no to that.
Wow.
That's a huge victory.
That's impressive, though. That was the New York Supreme
New
Court.
York
Yeah.
Supreme
Yeah.
Court.
Yeah, because even if those guys even see that.
And
that's
by
a
the way,
dumb
getting
idea.
booted back included getting a free haircut too, apparently, because all these guys got their heads shaved. Did you see that on the
No, I
way
didn't.
out? It was a free haircut, for God's sakes. Of
Wow.
course, they didn't exactly want that. They were in chains,
Oh.
and they just
Well, I
pulled
like
them over and scraped off all their hair.
I like the free haircut part of that, but
Yeah,
the
me
change
too.
thing is I'm not too big
You know,
on
I,
that part.
I had to shave my head and all that stuff. That's hard work, isn't it, Chris? Anyways,
Oh, I don't know.
All right. So, what other things do you have?
So we have another statement, and a great Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt. He's talking about the violence we've been seeing this last week is, and it's appalling. Another thing that needs to be confronted. We need we need to drill down to not only who's doing it, who's funding it, who's endorsing it, including TV personalities and stuff. Hold them all responsible. But Eric Schmitt said that this is really nothing new for the left, and he's absolutely right, that they've used violence to advance their agenda for decades. If they can do it through coercion, if they can do it through propagandizing, if they can do it through bribery and manipulation, they will. But when push comes to shove, they expect to get their way, and they will use violence. The sooner our side realizes that this is what we're dealing with, and that you not only have the thugs on the streets doing it, you have everybody in any official office that sits there and gives it their blessing, either by ignoring it or by giving them a little thumbs up. These people, they have a violent agenda to dominate the country. Schmitt was absolutely right.
They always have.
They always have.
And clearly, this thing with the border, this was intentional, and I think it was planned a long time ago. I think it was planned back in the Obama administration, and they started working with the cartels right then and there. And
at least that far back.
At least, yeah. I don't believe it was before that. I'm sure the dream was there to go in and if you're a cartel guy and do what you want to do to anybody. They're all over the USA. They're gonna have a hell of a time finding them all. But look how effective that Trump has been in shutting down that border
in 2 months.
Isn't that something? 96% shut down.
Yeah.
And that's what. And they were saying, "Oh, we need a law. We need a law for that." Mm-hmm. Well, apparently, he did it on the laws that we have on the books already.
Yeah. It was intentional. It was an intentional betrayal of the United States of America, what happened for the last 4 years. And we saw things happen. You might remember where the governor of Texas tried his best to control the influx into Texas, and they put up barriers in the river, and they did things like this. And the federal government came in and shut it down. The federal government came in and facilitated the invasion.
Yeah.
Oh no, I went down there and the state of Texas response to the federal government's overreach there was pretty funny to hear. So essentially, that was basically happened at a park where the federal agents were at, and so the state comes in and says, "No, that's our park." So, and we'll do anything we want to in our park. And so they put the barriers back up. And so, truthfully, the Border Patrol agents, they didn't want any part of the Biden rules and regulations. And so they basically said, well, when the state of Texas gets in front of us, we're not going to do anything to force them out of the way because it's really the state of Texas, because they recognized what the real problem was. And when you talk to those Border Patrol agents, they were so frustrated that they were handcuffed from and prevented from doing their job by their own bosses. And so I guarantee you there was a wide round of applause along the border when the administration changed.
Okay, Greenland and Canada and Mexico.
So I saw Denmark.
Just a minute.
Go ahead.
I'm pointing at Bill.
I'm going to set him up for this one. I saw Denmark wants California.
If you guys are going to be on your and running the show, you got to share the. You got to share.
I'm setting him up for this one. So I saw where Denmark wants California, and to which I replied, "But that sounds like fair trade, Greenland for California." So.
Yeah, I'll go for that. That sounds like a win-win.
What do I think about Greenland?
Yeah, and, Greenland and Canada becoming a state.
I think that
and Mexico.
I don't think Greenland's ready to become a state, but it's probably ready to become a U.S. territory.
Yeah, okay.
So right now, the U.S. basically has all of the strategic defense for Greenland by treaty with Denmark. And it's probably a good idea for us to acquire Greenland because of the Silk Road and kind of the Arctic trade routes, and then our strategic missile and then energy reserves, all that kind of stuff, and our ability to push projection, economic development, territory.
How about military?
Yeah, well, that's strategic, right? That we can put missiles there, that we can put bases there, that we can have training there, that we could have ability to when we say project power, I mean you could stage forces there if you wanted to. So that's a huge strategic difference, China and Russia. So Greenland makes a lot of sense for the United States. Denmark doesn't really use it, right? And we're Greenland's national defense right now. Denmark, basically the United States does kind of run Greenland. So what Donald Trump said is very plausible. It's a plausible next step. And it's probably a really good strategic step for the United States.
Yeah.
That nobody's really thought about Greenland that much. And it's been a long time since, I mean, it's the same thing like when the United States acquired Alaska. Nobody had really thought about it, but it made a huge strategic difference.
Absolutely.
That really helped us during the Cold War.
Yeah.
And now helps us a lot with energy development, right? So Greenland can be the same thing, that we can drill oil, we can bring energy prices down, gas prices down. We can have a strategic, bigger advantage over our competitors for the next century. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think that we should make, and we have a lot of money, and Denmark needs money, right? Because we have not as much freedom as I like and capitalism I like, but we have freedom in America. And Denmark has difficulty developing capital because of the socialist government. So Greenland makes a lot of sense. We should give them $1 trillion or whatever. We should make a deal. We should acquire it. We could use it for generations to come.
Right. And so, if for that money, we'll just borrow a little bit more from China. But the reality,
why $1 trillion? Where did that come up?
The reality here, folks, is
Make a deal.
It's pretty simple. It's we don't fly across the Atlantic to go to Moscow. We fly over the North Pole. And whenever you look at the map from that perspective, we ain't that far from Russia. In fact, obviously, both Canada and Alaska share a boundary there through the Arctic Sea. But the truth is that Greenland, why is Greenland so important? Because, as Bill pointed out, it's the strategic advantage that it gives you with controlling the Arctic region.
All right. How about Canada? Should it be a state?
Right now, so first
why
of all,
not?
Why should Canada not be a state? So it's its own country, right? You have to divest itself.
Dependent on who? So
let's think about the dichotomy, the way we're thinking. So we just talked about how that America hasn't had a border enforced, right? Whether that's globalism or that's with the cartels. One of the things that makes you a country is you have a political boundary that you control, right? So what we're talking about is This is part of what the tension was when Trump came on the scene too. Whether or not we have a one world government and like this just international order, or whether the nation state is relevant. So part of international realism is the nation state is relevant. America has its own border. We don't have to do what other countries say. We can deal with them. We can contend with them. We can negotiate with them. But there's not another country over us.
Exactly.
Right. So we have that's our initial starting point for Trump's foreign policy. So Canada's its own state. So if you want to take Canada and make it America, either Canada gives it up or we take it by force. Right. Those are kind of your options, and those aren't immediate options available to the president.
Or you tariff them. You tariff them.
Well,
like they're doing
in international relations.
We don't need any of their alcohol. We don't need any of their cars. We don't need them. They need us. We protect them.
The instruments of national power.
What about toques?
Toques?
Yeah, we have a very
is that part of your family?
Shortage of toques in this country.
What's a toque? What's a toque?
Oh, come on, seriously.
What's a toque? I don't know. Do you know?
I'm not actually afraid to say it anymore.
The McKenzie brothers. For Pete's sake, you're old enough to remember this.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Never mind.
These some of your relatives or what?
No, it's never mind. We'll go on. This crowd's way too young for that joke.
We're just not probably ready to make a Canadian province.
I'm 76 years old. I think I would remember anything called the toques.
Yeah. Well, look it up. Look it up on the internet.
I don't think
Google
it's worth it. Quite frankly, but okay. All right. So Canada, you're saying what about you, Chris?
Well, I think Bill explains things pretty succinctly there. The one dynamic that I would add to this with Canada, we're seeing it happen in Germany and other places that aren't contiguous to the United States, but they are culturally imploding. And we've had the whole Trudeau nightmare go on. They haven't figured out exactly what they need to do to turn the corner on that. But what we may be looking at with Canada is they end up being a Chinese satellite state because of what they're at culturally, economically, and otherwise. And so we have huge dynamics going on here.
Yes.
The big picture is that President Trump, unlike the previous so-called administration, President Trump is looking out and saying what is best for the future of America. Now, is that akin to Hitler and Stalin? Absolutely not, because a free, prosperous, functioning America redounds to freedom and prosperity for all those under our any sphere of influence. Okay, and so from that perspective, yeah, we do need to deal with these things aggressively, whether it's Greenland or Canada or the other issues, the secure border. But it all comes back to let's look at these things from a perspective of what is best for America. And I will tell you that a Canada under American so-called dominion would be 1,000 times better off than a Canada that's been overtaken and subservient to China, for example.
Panama Canal. Go ahead.
Well, the real distinction and the real problem we've got with Canada is their immigration policy. If they had an immigration policy similar to ours, then most of our complaints about Canada disappear. Well, regardless of who happens to be, in power in Ottawa, the reality is that they're very similar to us in a lot of respects, culturally, et cetera. Our problem is that because that border is so lax because of this relationship we've had with them for the past couple of centuries, we've really kind of ignored that. Well, it only comes into play whenever you consider that because of the immigration policies that they have, it's causing us a problem now.
Yeah.
So whether or not it needs to be another state,
well, and you got fentanyl coming through that border as well. So that's
because of that
causing a lot of deaths in this country.
Yes.
And they're responsible for that. They're letting it through our border. I don't know if they have any ties with the cartels, but it wouldn't shock me if they did.
Certainly.
Would it?
Well, they're everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's
so okay. Now we're at Canada. We're kind of a little bit. I think they ought to tariff them and at least get things even. and that's going to hurt them a lot, I realize. But you know what? Why are we supporting them?
That's what it's been. The current situation has been just that.
Huh?
The current situation has been just that. You're right. The fact that what we're trying to do now, we're trying to balance things out rather than us constantly being, spoon feeding everybody else around us.
It's just balancing out the amounts that each are the taxes, the commodities that come in, cars, whatever, whiskey.
I think Justin Trudeau's pitiful exit is kind of a Brexit moment, and that means that there's an opportunity for a really new situation with Canada.
Yeah.
That how much his liberalism was rejected, and kind of went out in a way that just all after COVID and after his lackluster foreign policy and economic policy, like him being pushed out means that we can renegotiate our situation with Canada. So it's an opportunity.
Yeah,
we have to kind of be ready.
And
for
the new guy who had threatened to shut off the electricity in northern New York State and other states that are attached to Canada, well, that guy backed down. Yeah. Trump is negotiating with the guy. You see, they're making progress, and they're making progress with all the countries.
If you go into a war saying, I'm only going to fight this war as long as I don't ever have any harm inflicted on myself, you might as well surrender, because it's not going to work that way. Right. Trump is going in saying, yeah, we may take some hits. We may have to pay a little extra for this or that, but we're going to go in and we're going to make the sacrifice now so that we can reap the victory later.
Yeah. Well, the whole idea here is that what we're doing is that we are responding to tariffs that were already put on. For instance, there's a huge demand for American beef over in China, but only a limited number of folks can access it because of the tariff that's put on American beef going overseas. So imagine how that market opens up if we do two things. We put an equivalent tariff on their junk that they import in here. And how does that affect the economies of both countries? Well, I guarantee you, China does not survive without selling stuff to America.
Amen.
And when you've got 4 billion hungry mouths to feed every day, then Z knows one thing for sure. He's 3 meals away from being gone. Yeah. And he cannot afford one day of Chinese goods being sold in America. So the fact of the matter is that Trump is the only one who's had the intestinal fortitude to actually broach the subject to begin with. It's time to level the playing field, and that's all these tariffs do. Hey, you don't like tariffs? We'll get rid of the tariff. Yeah. We'll get rid of our tariff. You get rid of your tariff, and make it even.
Equals out. But
exactly, they're screaming foul that we might do the same thing they've been doing to us.
The problem with China is that if you go to a phone book, you try to call somebody there, it's very difficult because they're all the wrong number.
Well, my cow farmers are doing pretty good
everybody.
right now. My cow farmers are doing pretty good. But
well, where are the jokes coming from? You or you? Come on.
I want to change the subject here. I want to bring up one other thing, but go ahead, Don, about the cow farmers.
Well, so my cow farmers are doing okay right now.
Now you taking over the show?
Cattle prices are up generally, but the reality is imagine how much better they could be doing if they were able to market American beef overseas and without these restrictive tariffs. Right. Well, it changes a lot. It changes that dynamic. And so that by itself, folks, would tend to raise prices. But then instead of us converting what was beef production land into basically deer hunting property here in Missouri, because cattle farmers are under the gun with both trying to fertilize those fields of fescue on top of those rocky ridge tops, but also transporting their product to market. It is a very expensive thing to move a cow from Missouri to the stockyards in Kansas and Minnesota, and our farmers suffer from that. What we really need to do is expand that market and create the same thing that they've got in Kansas, and also diversify that food supply so that we don't run into problems like we had during COVID, which put a big old exclamation point on why we need processing plants right here in Missouri. And we need to quit getting in their way with onerous regulations.
Okay, Bill, Mexico and Panama.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's in our interest, for America's interest, to have control of the Panama Canal.
Absolutely.
Teddy Roosevelt was highly influenced by a naval theorist called Alfred Mahan. And Alfred Mahan had this general theory that the surface area of the ocean was just incomprehensibly vast, but that all shipping and commerce, even though like the ocean was so big, it had to go through certain choke points, like the Straits of Malacca, the Straits of Gibraltar, the Suez Canal. And so if you had a navy or you had a country that could control those choke points in the ocean, you could control international commerce and trade and thereby become the world power. So that's one of the reasons why America was so invested in the construction of the Panama Canal. And we built that in order to achieve our influence around the world and control trade, basically, and to kind of push out our competitors. So that was Teddy Roosevelt's vision. I think Trump is a big fan of Teddy Roosevelt as a president. Andrew Jackson too, but Teddy Roosevelt particularly. And McKinley.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think he liked Roosevelt more, but I think we should reassert our control of the Panama Canal. I think that's going to be a big benefit for us as we're thinking about American interests in the 21st century. I think with Mexico, we did a lot to undo NAFTA by renegotiating those trade agreements. We have to close down the border. We have to check the cartels. Nobody should be coming in our country, fighting fentanyl, kidnapping our citizens and bringing them back to the border. That's happening. So we have to stop that. Priority one, I think he's working on that. And then two, it's not free trade. Like we said, since Bretton Woods till the election of Trump, we should have fair trade, right? We should make that people can produce cars in the United States. You don't have to outsource that out to Mexico and other countries too. So it's about rebalancing that. But the corruption south of the border, actually the corruption, just south of where we are, is so bad with the cartels threatening law enforcement officials, bribing law enforcement officials, controlling the government, and kind of running the show all the way down through South America. So, our country has to get a handle on that.
So how does that affect Scheinbaum, the Jewish president of Mexico?
I think so. So I think that we try to view every country like America and like our president, and they have very different situation when you have these big cartels that are kind of running autonomously.
Are they running her or is she running them?
So I think that you could think of the government in Mexico as its own cartel that might be equal and sometimes weaker and sometimes stronger than the other cartels. But an organized crime, just like in any movie you'd see, they're going to buy off the cops and the federales, right? Or threaten their families. Yeah. So one way to think of the Mexican government, in my view, is that the Mexican government itself is a cartel, which is sometimes in a weaker or stronger position than the cocaine fentanyl cartels.
So who are you going to deal with?
So I think that you have to deal with the nation state because that's our primator for the government. But you also have to recognize that the president of Mexico can make a deal with Donald Trump, but then the cartels can say we are extra legal, extrajudicial, and so they need to be dealt with in their own way with force at the border and with force with our military and paramilitary operations.
And we have considered them now as terrorists down there.
I think you ever watch that movie Sicario? Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of like what's happening.
Right.
Is that those guys really? I mean, they are murdering people in Mexico, Texas. They are at least participating in human trafficking around the world and kidnapping children.
Fentanyl.
They're sex trafficking.
Women.
Exactly. Fentanyl. Getting our whole nation addicted to drugs, which is destroying communities all over. And they act like there's not a border. And so the only way to meet something like that, I think, is with force, right? To stop the border, to use our military back against them. And because they're doing evil things, they're evil people. And that means that people who are not evil, but who are good and strong have to fight them. And that's all there is to it.
Well, that's so the cartels have a saying down there, and I don't know it in Spanish, but what it means is lead or silver, you pick. And so what that means is that we can either buy you off or we can kill you. Yeah. And so that has, let's
Which
face
is mafia. It's mafia.
Yeah, it's mafia. It's the
right?
same, it's the same kind of
mafia. Hello.
I'm just listening. I think you guys are really nailing the situation.
So you got to talk to these Italians. They fall asleep quick.
So the reality.
Oh no, I'm ready. I'm sitting here waiting. I've got something I want to talk to you about. I'm waiting to go.
First, and then I'll get to you.
So the reality is that the only way that you can do that is with a concerted effort from the whole purpose of the being of the federal government and their 17 enumerated powers. That is exactly this thing, right? That we're not going to leave it up to some poor sheriff in a county down in southern Texas to try to decide whether or not he wants his family killed off or if he wants to fight crime.
Yeah.
That the federal government, that is their one job, is to come in and do that for them by declaring the cartels basically terrorist organizations. We can now look at them, just like the state of Texas did, as virtually enemy combatants, and you can deal with them
inside of Mexico.
You can deal with them wherever you find them.
Okay,
and that is how important that is, because now you put them on the defensive, and President Trump moving that direction is absolutely critical for the protection of the citizens, like what the federal government was designed to do.
Chris.
Okay, so can I change the subject real quickly? By the way, Don and Bill were absolutely right. Now, I want to bring up something. It sounds like I'm going down a total, absolute rabbit trail here, but I'm going to tie it back to current events, okay? Benghazi, 2012, right before the re-election of Obama, there was an attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi.
Yeah.
And for the sake of the election, for the sake of their political careers, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, they decided to abandon Ambassador Christopher Stevens and the staff. They could have sent in military to fix the situation, to save those American lives, to protect our interests. They chose to just cast them to the wolves.
And that was U.S. territory they invaded.
Right, absolutely. Now, let's take this back to something that just happened this last week. Remember, we had this great victory where we brought down those two stranded astronauts.
Yes.
SpaceX brought them down, and they were going to be up there for 8 days last year, and they got stranded up there because the Boeing capsule had defects in it. They didn't trust it to bring them down safely, and Elon Musk was ready to go get them last summer, and the decision was made purely political to abandon those astronauts, leave them up there, because it might make Elon Musk look good. They looked at the politics of the situation, and they totally abandoned these astronauts.
The Biden administration, let's be clear.
The Biden-Obama administration, I call it, because obviously old Joe, and his auto pen weren't even thinking their way through any of this. The point being that they did the exact same thing in forsaking those two astronauts as they did in Benghazi. They did the exact same thing as was done in Afghanistan with the Americans that were left behind there. That the left, these people have zero conscience.
And when the Houthis were bombing the ships in the waters by there, and all the ships now had to go around. Remember the Horn?
We don't want it to look bad.
South America. Okay. And what did they do? They did nothing. They were shooting at American ships.
So what we saw done to this is a lesson that America needs to learn. What we saw done to these two astronauts, what we saw done in Benghazi, what we saw done in Afghanistan, what we saw done in the Straits of Hormuz you're describing, is that these people will happily sacrifice innocent life if they think that their political optics would look better if they do that. These people will put the well-being of Americans totally on a back burner. And it's the same thing you see at the border. It's the same exact pattern. Thank God that Elon Musk has had his technical abilities, and that Donald Trump said, go get those astronauts.
Well, I love the quote from Alan Shepard, which explains this perfectly.
Okay.
Whenever he was on top of that Atlas V rocket, or was he first Saturn V? I can't remember, but
he was first to Redstone.
So they asked him, well, how'd you feel? And he said, I felt exactly how you would feel if you were getting ready to launch and knew you were sitting on top of 2 million parts, all built by the lowest bidder on a government contract.
I love that.
That's pretty damn good right there. Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
No, so it's really unfathomable to me that our country cannot go rescue 2 astronauts on the International Space Station. And you alluded to Benghazi, and you alluded to why they're making political decisions, and that made me think of some things that I've been listening to that Reagan was saying. Remember Reagan, one of the issues of the 1980 election was the Iranian hostage crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And his point that you had people over there in the embassy and he said he would never put soldiers or citizens or State Department folks in harm's way without the ability to shoot back. They could reinforce, they could evacuate. But Jimmy Carter just left them there.
Yep.
And left them to fend for themselves. And so he kind of ran on that he would say, if there's an American anywhere, they'll be to defend themselves, we'll defend them. And when there's a national security meeting, we'll take all the political people out of the room. There'll be no political calculation. We'll just say, is it right for the American people? Is it moral? And that'll be the decision matrix that the president decides things on. And as you were saying that at Benghazi, I just thought about the contrast between, how Reagan said, if there's an American in harm's way somewhere, we're going to go get them or they're going to be able to defend themselves. And those are the two options. But that you could have 2 American astronauts just stranded for 8 months, 9 months, 10 months.
Incredible.
And there's not a president, which we didn't have a president of the United States for 4 years, in my opinion.
Right. You're absolutely right.
It says, we are going to go get them. Those are American astronauts. We are going to solve it right now. And that wasn't a priority. That's just unfathomable to me.
So on the Benghazi thing, I think what got kind of a little bit overshadowed, I haven't seen much reporting on it, and I'm shocked that you didn't mention it, Dave, was the JFK document dump that happened this last week.
I did mention it, didn't I?
Yeah.
Earlier?
Was it earlier?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, I missed that part of the show.
Just that nothing's coming out of it.
Well, I heard that there's a bunch of
it's kind of been a little splash.
Well, it's going to take a little while to get through 80 million pages of stuff. And so, I heard a bunch of CIA agent folks have asked for asylum from Putin and Castro since that document dumps happened.
I would think so.
They're headed out of the country. But now that part was a joke, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know that there's CIA agents that are leaving the country due to the JFK document.
Before we have, we're getting a lot of feedback off of the show, on the show, with somebody is Radio USA something.
Well, so tying that back to the Benghazi thing, as Chris was talking about, there's a lot of documents out there that are to be made because of that, because we heard reporting all over the place, like that there was a Spectre gunship that was on standby, actually circling, and one of the operators on top of the building had the radio to talk to them, and for some reason it wasn't working or they weren't responding to it. And so I would like to know if that story is true. And the only way we're going to find that out is by releasing some of these documents.
Oh yeah. Let me read some of these things. I don't know if they're a big deal or not. Okay. Vin Dog Radio USA. I can't read the rest because it's blocked off. Public schools who don't get rid of DEI or critical race theory should not be funded. All right, yeah. No mas Hamas. Great morning show, Mr. Dave. Who's this from? I don't know. I'd love to have a great conversation with you, Mr. Dave. Okay. Love watching the show live on X. There you go.
But what's weird is that these comments came in at 10 o'clock p.m., which tells me,
oh my God, they're all over the world.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right.
And did I not set my clock back or Springfield, whatever it was? So it's 10 p.m. Jeez. Sorry, I don't know. Went a long way for that one.
See, now that's the kind of joke that Don or Chris will laugh at.
They didn't even play the fake laughter for that one.
Patricia Odin Maxwell. Thank you, Chris, for bringing that out about Benghazi. That has been in my heart ever since Hillary let those precious people die like they did. I feel that this will still be dealt with during President Trump's administration, and it won't be too soon for me.
Absolutely needs to happen.
That would have been better with his Count Chocula accent.
Well, I don't have a Trump accent.
Okay, that was better than that joke you told earlier. It was
come on, which one? Chinese one?
Oh, was that a joke? I'm sorry.
Did Dave tell a joke? When did that happen?
Kiss my grits. I tell you what, this is not good. This is terrible. You know what? Here's something for you. There was this donkey minister, and his his only child. Well,
okay.
you need to stop talking when I start.
I'm trying to delay the
I am
inevitable.
sorry if the middle of my sentence has interrupted the beginning of yours.
I
pain is
disavow
coming.
any part of what is getting ready to get said. So,
Okay, shut their mics off.
I'm paying for this microphone.
Except for these people.
Don't you turn off my microphone.
Well, you're not the one that's killing me. All right, so
that really kind of was a setup, that whole debate. You ever heard that story of that?
Yeah.
Well, I'd actually want to talk about the CIA more. Can I talk about that?
No.
Or do you have more stuff on your agenda?
I don't know. I'm
Yes,
trying to remember
please,
the joke.
please, Bill. Let's talk about the CIA.
Let's talk about the CIA.
Wait, no,
You want to tell jokes?
No.
It's your show, Dave. Okay, we can talk about the primary New Hampshire debate where Reagan said, "Don't turn off my microphone." We could talk about my mixed feelings on the CIA. We could talk about whatever.
Okay, go ahead, because I forgot the joke now.
Is this
Okay,
Choose Your News? Is that what we're doing
Killed
now?
me.
It's
These
Choose
guys
Your Own Adventure.
assassinated me.
That's
They
bad.
assassinated me
I
on my
wouldn't.
own damn show.
Let's see.
So-
That's
we're going to
not
vote.
right.
We're going to vote now, Dave.
You're
Let's
gonna
talk
vote-
about the
you're gonna vote me
CIA.
off the show.
Yeah,
Right,
who
the CIA.
votes, who votes for the CIA story?
Okay, so I've been, since RFK became the health secretary, I've been listening to all of his interviews and reading his stuff, and he has lots of information on the CIA. And one of the stories I thought was most interesting is when JFK was assassinated.
Yeah.
They're telling him he goes home from school, and when he gets to his house, his dad RFK, who's the attorney general at the time, and the CIA director are there, and he just recalls their conversation where his dad was like, "Did you guys do this?" And it kind of planted a seed in his mind about, and then he's kind of delving into the CIA. Everything from that, we toppled governments over oil and bananas in Guatemala.
Sure.
And that the CIA was doing things that were outside of the Kennedys, what JFK didn't want him to do. There was contradiction.
Right.
And that the CIA may have been involved in RFK's assassination. And that they were this agency kind of run amok and seemed like they, with the declassified stuff, had things within themselves. Eisenhower used the CIA in a way different way with John Dulles because he viewed the CIA as a way to prevent World War III. And even what I just said about the cartels, I kind of feel like we should use the CIA to fight the cartels.
Yeah.
But it always has kind of unnerved me that there are these operatives, they're doing things, and they kind of ignore what the president wants to say to the people.
And they're not elected. They're
not elected, right?
And that is sedition and treason.
I think in a lot of ways, JFK was trying to get the CIA under control.
Yep.
He was trying to say, you guys have really gone way beyond your scope and your charter for the presidency. But that's just kind of fascinating to me. I mean, so I think the CIA is a tool that we should use for sure.
Sure.
But I definitely don't. I think there have been times the CIA has done things pretty, and the FBI, for sure, the FBI, wiretapping Martin Luther King, following him around, killing civil rights leaders in the 60s. That's all documented too.
Well, let's talk about what the FBI did just in the last 4 or 5 years to essentially terrorize and suppress any opposition to the Obama-Biden cabal. And, that Dr. Simone Gold I mentioned earlier, when she describes how they behaved, the things we saw in the aftermath of J6, the things we saw during the first Trump term, people like Roger Stone, law-abiding citizens who have an entire SWAT team show up at their house. The FBI has been fully corrupted and weaponized. It's just, there's no other way to describe it.
Well, that show the.
All right, wait a minute. Now I've rethought of this joke, okay? And I'm going to tell this joke. If it
come on, Bill, come on, quick, Bill, come on.
Right.
Well, I tried.
You don't have that kind of power
Chris.
here. Anyways, this donkey preacher, his only daughter is going to get married, and he wants to do the ceremony. So he gets to the part in the ceremony where he says, "And now," and this is for all of you, "and now you may kiss my ass."
So back on the.
Look at him.
We need the crickets there, JP.
What's wrong with it? You're not moving. Something's wrong with you.
Back on the CIA,
Yeah.
where we saw it fall apart.
JP's laughing his ass off over here.
Where we've seen it fall apart with.
Where's my applause?
After Dulles.
Where's the crickets?
There you go.
Where we saw it fall apart after Eisenhower was, had to do a lot with the relationship between the CIA and the organized crime over Castro and the nationalizing of Cuba. And, that was one of those, hey, you do me a favor, I do you a favor. Now, see, that's
What was
more.
that?
That was an Italian accent.
Forget
right there.
about it,
So
man.
it's
You're
not
good.
Count Chocula.
He's good.
But then we see that fast forward into and I realized that they weren't connected with this, but they almost had to be, and that was Fast and Furious. Let's keep in mind how Fast and Furious was supposed to work. We were going to illegally allow guns to go south of the border, and the way we were going to find out where those guns ended up is when there's dead people laying around them.
Exactly.
All, by the way, which were all Mexican citizens.
Yeah.
And so in whose world was a great idea, right? Where somebody had to die for your stupid little plan of trying to figure out where guns were going. And so Mexico at that point had a very good reason to come back at us with, lawsuits or otherwise, because that was without a doubt an incursion into their country.
Yeah.
We allowed criminal activity and supported criminal activity.
No more filibustering. I don't
Why?
know where you learned to do that. Where
What
did
are
you
you
learn how to
talking
filibuster like that? I got 45 seconds to go.
Oh, okay.
All right.
You can have
45 seconds.
I yield the 45 seconds back to you, Dave.
Thank you. It's 38 now, you schmuck. It ain't getting any bigger. All right. Well, I got to thank you guys for coming in. Yeah, especially you, Dan. You worked overtime. And so I'm very grateful. I thought it was a great show. I mean, really did. I agreed with the guy who's 10 hours away. So I will be back again, I think, next, unless we have another tornado here. I'll be back with another edition of the Dave Weinbaum Show next Friday.